Hey everyone, welcome to GameFace on Sifted Games at Sifted.net. This is episode 162. You may think that the industry is a little quiet right now, but this show begs to differ. We have 11 different topics in today's show. Some people made some comments about last week's show. I said, oh, we need to get through all these, and then we talked an hour about Stadia.
Yeah. I knew that wasn't going to get short.
But I knew we were going to spend a lot of time on Stadia, and therefore...
So bring that over here. So
we'll share it. There you go.
Shane, you missed the...
I printed not enough rundowns of the show today, so
Matt never happened in 162 episodes.
Yeah, I did not print enough rundowns, so we're going to share
pretty good track record there.
But we do have 11 topics today, so I don't want to spend too much on the intro of the show. Thanks to everybody, all our patrons on Patreon. The month turned over. Thanks to everybody who stuck with us for the month. We really appreciate it. We got some new folks in on our Give Me Credit Patreon tier. You'll see them at the end of the list. It's running at the bottom of the screen right now. A couple notes before we get going. As usual, if you're watching this on YouTube, we'd really appreciate it if you could help us on Patreon. It would be great. If you can't do that, you can give us $2.50 for free every single month via Twitch Prime. All that stuff is down in the description. It takes like a minute. We'd really appreciate it if you guys could do that for us. So without further ado, let's get on with the show. Not a ton of big games coming out this week.
No, but we already had a couple.
Yeah.
So we're just kind of buckling down and waiting for Mortal Kombat, pretty much.
April might be a little tough.
Yeah.
We may have to work a little bit to get some shows together, but we've been through it before, and we'll do it again. But probably the biggest game of the week that was released was the new Yoshi game for Nintendo Switch, Yoshi's Crafted World. I've been playing the game now for pretty much the entire weekend. I'm pretty much at the end of it, so I think I have a pretty good grasp on it at this point. If you guys remember, I talked about this game on the show after the demo that they had put up on the eShop, and I was not a gigantic fan of the game after playing the demo, and as it turns out, now that I played the final game, that demo was the first level in the entire game. So it was kind of a training level, which makes sense, particularly when you look at my criticisms of it, how simple it was, and how it didn't really go very deep. That all adds up now that I realized it was the very first level in the game. I've dove a lot deeper into it at this point, and I will say just right off the bat that my impressions of the game have improved. I like the game more than I did when I played the demo. I will say this, though. The engine in this game, I don't know where they got it from, but it's certainly not the same engine that's running games like Breath of the Wild or Super Mario Odyssey. It has technical issues, despite being a very simple game, lots of flat, shaded textures, not a lot of polygonal complexity, but there are some moments in the game and cutscenes where the game chugs, which is a little strange. The story of the game is, and not that it even really matters for games like this, and you're kind of seeing the cinematic on the screen right now.
The Unreal Engine.
It's the Unreal Engine. I don't know how to take that, actually. I don't know what to say about that. You would think the Unreal Engine would be able to run a little better than this, and typically it would, I think, but maybe they're just not masters at utilizing it. But I was right in that it wasn't the same engine that they were using on those other games.
That's true. Could be worse. Could be Frostbite.
Yeah, exactly. So there's really not a story in this game. It's just a setup like a lot of sort of kid-oriented Nintendo games. There's this big rock that has 5 jewels in it. Someone shows up, you fight over it, there's a weird explosion, the jewels go flying everywhere, and then it's a race to be the first to collect the 5 jewels.
Have you ever had a situation in life where you solved the problem by having to plug things you found into another thing? Like
only in Resident Evil.
Like, is it... It's such a common convention in video games, but has anyone ever needed to do that unless you consider, like, I don't know, unless you make, like, a big stone display for where your bills go?
Yeah. The funny part is if you look at the facial expressions on the Yoshis here, they look just about as apathetic towards the story as I was. So I'm not alone on that one, apparently. But it's basically just a setup to get you to go and collect 5 gems. The way the game is structured, it's set up a lot like a 2D Mario game. There's like a world overview screen and a predetermined path through that overview screen, through that map. And you basically have to tackle the game linearly. There's not a lot of branching paths where you can kind of choose two different ways to go. You kind of have to keep trudging forward. And I think a big part of why it's designed that way is because when you go to a new world, after you've finished all the levels in one world, when you go to another one, you need a certain number of flowers to unlock that next world. And it's not like crazy hardcore where, oh, okay, well, there were 10 possible flowers on that last level, and you need at least 8 or 9 of them to get. It's not like that. Like, I've always had an abundance of flowers to unlock the new levels. Maybe towards the end, I mean, I feel like I'm at the end of the game already, and I haven't got to a place where I was like, oh, I need to go back and replay some of these other levels to get enough flowers to open up the next one. So it's pretty gentle in that way, and pretty much every other way. To the best of my recollection, I've died twice the entire time. And both those times that happened, it was basically one of those levels where you're automatically getting shoveled through the level and something big just fell on Yoshi and just killed him instantly. It wasn't like an attrition thing where I took enough hits over like 10 minutes that I just died.
Does it take place on an island?
It kind of...
I'm just looking for
Flippin' Island,
looking for evidence that the Flippin' Island thing
well,
was
you
true.
can see my homage in the lower third there. I was like, I have to make sure that I mention flipping somehow in the lower third when we talk about this game. And so the game is mostly linear. In between some stages, what you're seeing right now, this gumball machine, the game has loot boxes, which is weird. There's a gumball machine. So as you play, you collect gold coins. And then you spend those gold coins on the gumball machine. And the gumball machine, you put your coins in, and then something comes out, and it's like a capsule toy, basically, that comes out. You don't know what's in it till it cracks open. It's a loot box, basically. Here you're seeing me pay the toll to unlock the next set of stages. So while the game is linear, it does do a good job of kind of building your skills and your knowledge of the game as you go. The object of the game really is just to reach the end. But you have to collect specific things before you get to the end, before you can get there. Because there are certain objects that you have to use there's like walls that you can break down with like explosive enemies. You suck in the explosive enemy and then throw it, and it'll break open a wall. There's lots of sections where there are like mine carts, and you have to push the mine cart, and then that will bust through a wall. There's lots of kind of environmental puzzles like that. And in fact, I would probably describe this game as a puzzle platformer more than just a side-scrolling platformer in general. The actual platforming in the game is very easy, very user-friendly. And what you're seeing right now, you're probably like, why is Yoshi in a box? So that's a costume. When you buy a costume at the gumball machine, and you don't know what it is until you get it, you can then equip that costume. And the costume doesn't give you like special abilities or anything. It's basically just armor. Which really you don't need in this game anyway. But it does give you armor, and if you do take too much damage, the costume will be destroyed. So they only take so much abuse before they break apart and you can't use them anymore. As far as like mission objectives go, like I said, the primary objective is get to the end, but sometimes you have to do things to do that. So when we talked about the demo, there was one section where you had to find 3 pieces of a train and then reconstruct the train, and the train would take you to the next area. There's lots of stuff like that. Like there's one where there's like a broken bridge, and you have to go and find the pieces of the bridge and rebuild the bridge so the train can go over the bridge. And there's lots of levels in the game where it's just where everything's kind of moving, and you just have to adjust. Lots of times where you're sitting on a train, and you have to jump and shoot and attack while the train is moving and not fall off of the train. That happens with some of the mine carts as well. There are sections of the game where the mine cart just goes careening through the level, and you have to jump over enemies and try to collect stuff. And that's really what this game is about, is collecting. Like back in the day, people used to call Nintendo games kiddie, and they were collectathons. This really is a collectathon. That is the objective through each level, is how much stuff do you collect. So you actually find flowers in each level, but there are also red coins that you can find, and if you get enough of those, you get a flower. The gold coins that you're seeing, if you get every 100 of those you get a flower. So it's not just, oh, there's a flower, now I've collected it, now I've got all the ones on the level. You have to earn some just by searching every nook and cranny of the game to try to find coins and other items like that. The reason it's, that we thought, or the fake name was Yoshi's Flipping Island, is because a big part of the game is how it flips perspective. So it looks like a 2D game, but there are parts of the game where you can walk into the level, and you'll be kind of behind some of the objects. And then there are other parts of the game where the actual world flips, and you see it from the other side, and you have to actually like navigate stuff that you couldn't see at all before. And there's little diversions like this, obviously, where you have like a mech Yoshi and you're just beating up buildings trying to get through it. No matter what the permutation or the combination or the idea, all of it's really easy. This game to me is targeted at 6 to 7, 8-year-old kids. And even them, I think, would probably have a laugh at the difficulty in this game. There's no difficulty settings, so you can't make it any more challenging if you'd like to. I've spent, I don't know, around 10 hours playing it so far, and I think I'm pretty much at the end, so it's not a gigantic game. There is incentive to go back and perfect each level if you want to. Go back and collect every coin, collect every flower. It's not a lot of incentive, but there's some slight incentive to do it. I have no interest in going back and doing that again. This is kind of one of those games where once you complete something, you're like, okay, I got everything out of that I needed at this point. When I drafted this game on my team, I think it was an alternate.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And I think I said this game's going to get a 7.5, and that'll be good enough for me for a game as an alternate. And right now, its Metacritic is sitting at 7.5.
Yeah, better than my first pick, which is sitting at 55.
Yeah, so. Well, yeah, I have Anthem in other leagues as well, so I feel your pain.
Go read that Jason Schreier article and illuminate yourself.
Yeah, well, I think you did a good job illuminating already. I mean, you had talked about the engine as being a big problem all along, and lo and behold,
they do cite that again. But clearly, there was a lot more in addition. It's one of the reasons, but not the only reason.
Yeah. So Jason Schreier again put out another great piece today. It's on Sifted right now. He basically talks about the whole behind-the-scenes stuff about Anthem and what happened with the game, and it's a pretty interesting read, to say the least.
Explains a few things, too.
Yeah, it definitely does. But anyway, back to Yoshi. The game is full-priced. I have a big problem buying this game at full price, but the problem, we've said it before, the problem with Nintendo games is they never really go on sale. I would probably pay $40 for this game. I think it's probably the right price for it. A full-price game that you only get 10 hours out of or something like that to me is a really hard sell. There are so many other games you can spend less and get way more gameplay out of. But it's another Yoshi game. Yoshi games are always kind of these mediocre B-team games from Nintendo that are short and easy, but cute. I've been playing it. My wife has just kept going, oh my gosh, so cute, so cute. The music is repetitive. There's not enough music in the game. You hear that same Yoshi theme over and over, and I got really, really sick of it after a while and actually ended up turning the music off in the game. The visuals, man, it's hard. It's hard to bang on them because you can just see all the creativity that's in it. I mean, basically everything's built out of corrugated cardboard. And so you can even see on the side there, like the corrugation in the side of the cardboard. It's hard to tell that that's what it's supposed to be sometimes, and I think that makes the game look ugly at times. And again, like here you're seeing they've just flipped the world. So you're kind of seeing everything behind the scenes, and it's just cardboard. The other problem I've had with this game is the sections where they ask you to go into the world instead of just going side to side. It's the pathfinding for those is hard. So a lot of times you're like, oh, I think I can go into the world. You try, and Yoshi won't go in. And so you move on, and then you realize, oh no, he could go back in that pathway. The game just has weird like hit detection. It wasn't letting me go back in there. So it's a little annoying in that regard. But overall, it's just like a fun, mindless, whimsical experience. You're not going to be really challenged. You may be challenged to think here and there. Like I said, it's really more of a puzzle platformer. You kind of got to figure out, okay, what do I need to shoot with the eggs to trigger this or trigger that? Or how can I get somewhere in the environment so that I have a clear shot at tossing an egg at an item? Because some items in the game that you collect, you don't have to physically touch them. You can just shoot them with an egg, and you can claim them that way. And a lot of the game is, okay, I can see that I need to hit that object with an egg, but how do I get to a point in the level where I can actually target it and hit it? And that's pretty much the entire game. Like I said, it's charming, it's fun. If you have kids and you're looking for a game for your kids to play where you're not going to have to sit there and babysit them the whole time they play it, it's a good choice. And in fact, if I had a really young kid that owned a Switch, this is certainly a game that I would target and I would have on my radar to get them. As an adult, it's really hard for me to rationalize spending $60 on this game.
What about as a rock?
As a rock?
Did you see that? There was, so I don't remember who did. Somebody put a video up where 2 rocks beat a level of this on the easiest mode.
What do you mean by two
they
rocks?
put like rocks on the controller.
I can totally see that. It is the easiest. It was funny too, going from Sekiro to this. Like
the counter system in this is way more forgiving.
It was honestly kind of exactly what I needed after playing Sekiro, to be frank. I mean, it was like, oh wow, a game where I can't possibly die no matter what I do. I'll take it right now. So it was kind of a breath of fresh air for me, and maybe that's clouding my judgment of the game a little bit. But I enjoyed it. It's pretty polished. It's not, I wouldn't say it's up to Nintendo's usual standards. Regardless of what you think of the visuals, the coloring, the color palette in it, it's literally like unicorn vomit. I mean, it's just, it violates every artistic law of using color in the book. But again, you can kind of forgive it a little bit because of the fact that it's supposed to be kind of this papier-mâché, paper craft world that you're visiting. Or it's also kind of like there are some sections of the game where it's like on a tabletop and you have the whole small character, big world aesthetic going on. But yeah, it's a good choice for kids, but if you're an adult, I would steer clear, even in April where there's not a lot of other options for you. I would suggest tackling something in your backlog, or maybe picking up a game that you were kind of wishy-washy on in the last couple of months and didn't want to pull the trigger right away. Maybe something like a Metro Exodus or something like that you passed on. I would recommend something like that before jumping in on Yoshi, which is a shame because Switch has been on a little bit of a dry spell here after Smash came out. We haven't really had a lot of big, even third-party games come out for it. First few months of the year have been pretty dry unless you're really into indie games.
Yeah, a couple of decent indies. I thought I did finally pick up Travis Strikes Again and thought that was better than I expected it to be.
Oh, it was? Okay. I haven't really heard too many people say good things about it.
It's not the best thing you'll play this year, but it is pretty funny, and it's always kind of nice to get like a Grasshopper manufacturer perspective on current trends, and there is some of that in there. So I was gonna say, if you're desperate for something to play on the Switch and you haven't played that yet, it's not a full-fledged No More Heroes game, obviously because it's a different thing, but like it did the job for me. It felt like a legit game in the series. I just wouldn't pick this one because I physically hate Yoshi.
A lot of people do. His games aren't
I don't
great.
even know why. I just hate looking at
Jeff
the character.
Gerstmann hates him too.
I hate looking at him. I hate everything about the character in every imaginable way. My favorite thing about him is that Mario hits him in the head to make him spit his tongue out in Super Mario World. Like I know that was supposed to be like a recent revelation. I always saw that. I always knew that's what he was doing. I knew he was hitting the dinosaur in the head to make him do the thing.
My wife loves Yoshi. She's like, I wish you could play games like this all the time instead of all the games with all the killing and the zombies.
I can't stand him. Like, it's not because he's cute or whatever. It's just like something about his proportions and his voice, everything. Just annoying. Like, I got no problem with cute. I love Kirby, but like Kirby's also kind of maybe got more of an attitude on him here and there. Kirby's also kind of a Lovecraftian horror when you really think about him, and Yoshi's just sort of like.
Well, there's better gameplay variety because...
also ran.
Yeah, because Kirby games, it's like he can turn into anything.
Right, everything
So you can pretty much do anything with the game that you want. It's much more rigid and structured with Yoshi's games. And I think he's kind of turned into the lowest rung Nintendo IP at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I also appreciate that Kirby will kill hundreds of people because someone stole his cake.
Right. That's all it takes.
Yeah, it's... like the pettiness of Kirby is attractive to me for some reason, whereas Yoshi that might be it with it. Yoshi seems so earnest,
and
so upfront. Like
it's hard to have a strong opinion on Yoshi because he's just so benign. It's like
yeah.
Like
and like for some reason that annoys me more than anything else. Is that he's so. Bleh.
He's just vanilla, yeah.
I will say I do actually really like the look of it. I think it look like the crafted element. I mean, I like Woolly World's look too. I think what they do visually.
Woolly World looks better than this game.
Yeah, I would agree with
enough,
that. I would agree
which
with
is
that.
very weird.
But I do think like the creativity in the art direction in the Yoshi games is very cool. I will just never see them firsthand because I refuse to play anything with him as the main character. But
and they do
like,
take it the whole way.
Like the corrugated. Same reason. I like it in Pikmin when you've got the little, the real life stuff in the garden, and I like that in Little Big Planet as well. I think that's a cool aesthetic. But That's
some
about
levels,
all I have to say nice about that.
Yeah, some levels look better than others. I'll say that
Yeah.
as well. A lot of the stuff in this B-roll is some of the better looking parts of the game. I'll say that. But it's just the colors in it. It's like it hurts my eyes to look at it. It's like every color on the planet is in every level of this game. There's really not themes to it, so to speak.
Yeah, well, it beats brown and gray.
That's true, which we get more than enough of in every other franchise. So there you go. Yoshi's Crafted World. I do not recommend it as a purchase at full price for most people, and sadly, you'll probably never find it on discount either. So I guess I'm just saying it's a pass, ultimately. Yeah.
One day it may be cheap.
Yeah. Or you can find it on eBay, maybe. Somebody plays it. But even there, the prices are usually close to retail.
Yeah, but I mean, for something like this, I would probably hold off until like at some point Nintendo by the end of the year is going to do like a digital sale for like $19.99. I'm pretty sure. Like physical copies don't drop in price very far ever because they usually go out of print before they can drop that far. But Nintendo's started to wake up to the digital sale thing, so I wouldn't be surprised if you could get this by $20 by Black Friday if you don't mind not having the physical copy of it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not going to miss anything by waiting till Black Friday to play this either.
Although that's kind of a sad way to spend Black Friday.
It is.
Hopefully there's going to be better things.
Better stuff to spend your money on, absolutely. All right, we're going to talk next about PAX East, which just happened this past weekend. PAX East is, I don't know, it seems like it's pretty much on equal footing with PAX West at this point.
Yeah, I would think so.
Maybe even in some years it's bigger.
Yeah, well, also remember like a lot more of the country can get to PAX East easily.
Yeah.
So
because the East Coast, you have that congregation of population, and people can get up to Boston.
Yeah.
Without...
I remember back at Tech TV, they used to say that 80% of our viewing audience was east of the Mississippi.
Yeah,
like
that's typical.
Yeah, it's like most of the country lives there.
Yep, and it was a good PAX East. I mean, there was PAX, I think, is generally known for indie stuff, and that held true again this time. We're going to talk about the bigger indie stuff that was announced at the show. But at PAX East this year, we got several huge announcements. Obviously, the biggest one is a bunch of stuff for Borderlands. Mm-hmm. So Borderlands 3 was announced finally. You know, we all knew that was in development for a long time. It was finally unveiled with a trailer. The unveiling of that game, which we're not seeing, by the way, I should mention. This is not Borderlands 3 you're seeing right now. And the reason you're not seeing Borderlands 3 is because 2K is one of the publishers that sends out copyright strikes for its trailers. So we cannot show you Borderlands 3 on the show today. Instead, we have to show you gameplay of Borderlands 2.
Nobody show anyone the promotional material we put out.
Yeah, we don't want people to actually see the marketing materials that we've created for our products. Well, it's really bizarre, but they're not alone, so I'm not going to single out 2K. There are other publishers that do the same exact thing. So Borderlands 3, and I hate to say this, looked exactly as I expected it to. Exactly.
Looks like Borderlands.
It's Borderlands in 1080p. And there's really not much else you can say about it. It appears that there's a bigger emphasis on vehicles, but nothing was really said about it.
I hope not, because the vehicles weren't amazing in the previous ones.
Right, but I mean, if you watch the trailer, vehicles are it seems like it take up the vast majority of the time, which led me to believe that it's going to be a big deal for Borderlands 3. I don't know. I could be absolutely wrong. It could just be a coincidence.
I mean, looking at this, you'd think trains were a big part of Borderlands 2.
Yeah, you're actually right. That's a good point. That's a really good point.
Like, you saw this at the opening, you're like, oh, I guess we're going to be robbing trains in this one. No.
Yeah. I mean, I will say this. They stuck with the same art style, but it looks a lot better.
Yeah, it looks like a 4K remaster, basically.
Yeah, I mean, the detail in Borderlands 3 in the cell shading is pretty impressive. The game looks good. I'll say that much. I am not a big fan of that franchise, as I've mentioned before. Mm-hmm. But I can understand where if you are over the moon over what they showed. Because it's not a big change. It's not a drastic departure. They're not rebooting their franchise. They're not taking some crazy new angle at it. It's like, hey, here's a much better looking Borderlands.
Here's more Borderlands.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably all it needs to be.
Yeah.
I did see some kind of consternation over, like, oh, it just looks like the same thing. Why did it take this long? Or what? But whatever. It's going to be Borderlands.
It is weird. It's like, why did it take so long?
I don't know. Like, too busy making bad Aliens games.
I guess. It's bizarre to me. And I mean, we still don't have a release date. They haven't announced platforms. I think it's pretty safe to say.
Pretty much everything.
Yeah. I mean, you think it'll come to Switch?
I mean, it's probably
2K has been pretty good.
It's probably scalable enough too. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not going to look as good, but like I mean, I don't see why not.
And 2K's put out Switch games.
And they're putting out Borderlands on Switch.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. And that was the other big announcement from Gearbox is that Borderlands 1 and 2 and the pre-sequel are all being remastered in 4K.
Right, which they've already been remastered for current gen.
For 1080p.
Now they're going
Now they're
full,
going up Ultra HD.
Yeah.
Any interest in that?
Not really.
I was a little puzzled by that, to be honest.
I already have those games like 3 times over. The thing that makes me wonder how far out Borderlands 3 is.
That's makes it a little scary.
That if you're putting out all, even just if you're putting it out as sort of the big pack, that makes me think like you're not worried about people buying 3 of these games and burning out on them 6 months later in time for Borderlands 3. I mean, I guess we'll see, but they didn't say anything about a release date.
Nothing. No release date, no platforms, nothing. They're just like, here's the trailer. And their unveiling was so painful. I don't know if their TriCaster there was having problems at PAX, but the video kept stuttering.
Randy blamed the PAX equipment.
Right. Which I'm guessing was whoever they hired to come in and direct all that stuff. Their TriCaster or whatever they were using just crapped out. And imagine working on a game for 5 years. I'm assuming they worked on it at least 5 years. And then you got to unveil it, and that's what happens. Mm-hmm. They had to try to show the trailer like 3 times. And at that point, it had already been uploaded to their YouTube channel. It was it was pretty bad.
This is why people do direct,
not
live presentations.
Yeah, and maybe that's a lesson for other publishers going forward. What would you like to see changed from the formula for Borderlands 3, though?
I mean, like I just think the whole like the whole 3 billion guns thing or whatever. It's like. Yeah, okay, there's 1 billion guns, but you're kind of hoping for you manage to get one of the 100 or 1,000 or so that's actually useful.
Right.
And the main thing with this series is like, I just don't make it all the way through. Like it's just,
I always quit before I make it. Yeah.
It just I feel like they run out of tricks before the halfway point sometimes.
Yep. I've never finished a Borderlands game.
I finished the first one. I finished the second one, but I never finished any of the DLC for the second one. Except, I think I played the Tiny Tina Dungeons and Dragons thing.
Yeah.
But like, they're just immense, and like, it's a looter game. I get it. It's like, that's kind of what those kind of things are. But like, for whatever reason, I've never found that the base gameplay like really sustained that long.
Me either.
And like
it's serviceable.
The first one I found a gun I really liked that stayed viable for like most of the last half of the game, which made it better but there's other times if I'm stuck using weapons that I don't particularly like, and that happens relatively often just because of the randomness of the loot system, like it can sour my likelihood of going back and turning it on again. If I know that I'm not going to have like weaponry I like to use, because they can talk about how like crazy and awesome it is, but really it's like, okay, I got a shotgun that shoots like 5 missiles at once. He's like, but really, what does that do? You miss with 3 of the 5 missiles, and you run out of ammo in 5 shots.
Yeah.
It's like, so what?
What good is it really?
Yeah, it's like a neat trick, but in the end, it's sort of like what you really want is a standard assault rifle with some kind of elemental damage.
Right.
And it's just I just like them to make more of the crazy stuff more viable for like regular use. You know what I mean? That would be kind of my one criticism that I'd like to see implemented going forward. Other than that, I mean, they clearly have a winning formula for the most part. I wouldn't mind seeing the humor maybe step up a 1 notch on the maturity level a little bit. Like it's a little.
These games have a T rating though, don't they?
Do they?
I don't think they're M.
I feel like anything where you're blowing heads off is going to give you an M.
I don't know.
I mean, the cover's a guy blowing his head. I mean,
I
wonder what the cover is. So in the cover, are they going to figure out a way to get that guy to shoot himself 3 times?
Yeah.
Like, I wonder what that's going to be.
I thought Borderlands
They
were
gotta be.
teen.
They gotta be M.
I didn't think there was blood in those games.
No, you can blow heads up in that. You can blow and like grenades like cause like jibs and stuff. It's gotta
If
be.
it's M rated, then you're right. I mean, the humor should match its ESRB rating.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like mature in the sense like, does everything have to be a poop joke kind of thing? You know, like just I mean, it's still the humor they have now will still get you the M rating. It's just I'd like to see it
elevate
a little bit.
Yeah.
And more Claptrap. I like Claptrap. I know he's a divisive figure.
Really? People don't like him?
A lot of people hate him. Yeah.
Really?
I like him. I mean,
it's always interesting because you always have your pulse on fandom. You always know like what the fans of a particular franchise like or don't like about a franchise. I'm always oblivious to it. Like I don't get into like the fan groups or anything. Like
well, I
just play the games.
Also, I like Claptrap because back in the day, the group I used to play online, everything online with, one of the guys in the group sounded exactly like he was personality-wise and sound and voice-wise, it was him. And I remember coming back to I played it at some event or something, and I came back and I was online. And I'm like, guys, like, Magus is in the Borderlands game. He is the robot, like really. And they're like, what? Yeah. And of course, the game comes out and plays, and like we all join in like a 4-player co-op, and it starts playing, and Claptrap starts talking, and he finishes like his first like little speech, and one of the other guys in the group goes, holy shit! Like it was just like, yeah, totally.
The moment of realization.
Like the tone, the desperate like me thing. Like it was totally him. So he kind of became the new we like Claptrap because he was like just like our friend.
Right,
so,
right.
And like eventually the friend was able to kind of embrace that. Early on he was not super happy. He's kind of
was he aware that people hated that character?
Eventually, yeah. But he in the end, I would describe him as a cross between Claptrap and Teddy from Persona 4.
Oh,
so
geez.
Try to imagine that. He was a good kid.
That's a good thing, because if he wasn't, he'd be doomed.
No, everyone's moved on now, and everything's fine, and everything turned out okay. But yeah, for a while there, we're like, whew.
So when do you think Borderlands 3 is coming, Matt?
I mean, it wouldn't shock me to see it like late next year.
Late next year?
Yeah. Like, I feel like, given what they've shown and given the release of the remasters, like, feels like you maybe put those out later this year and then put 3 out late next year. Maybe it might be a good, like August, September, like early in the holiday season release, like just to get ahead of things.
You would think if it were coming this year, they would have at least mentioned that.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean,
it'd have been like coming 2019.
Yeah, or you'd see like, I mean, at the very least, if we don't see anything further in that regard in terms of details at E3, I think 2020 is a pretty safe bet.
Yeah, it looks really
polished. But I would guess it's past. It's not in this fiscal.
Yeah, which means like after
March next year would be my solid bet.
Makes sense to me.
If they weren't doing the remasters of the other 3, I might guess earlier, but I just feel like that feels like a you can't put those two things out too close to one another.
Yeah.
So.
Or unless they put it out like 3 months before, just so people have just enough time to finish those before.
Yeah, it just feels like putting out, here's a pack of like 3 almost identical games that all last like 100+ hours.
That's a good. Nobody will want to buy the third one.
Like, what's the difference at that point?
Yeah, people are like, I've had enough of this. I don't want to buy Borderlands.
Like, unless you're like a hardcore Borderlands fan who's already played them all and you desperately need new content, and there's a fairly large audience for that, I think. But I just feel like you don't want to. You don't want to kind of like give them a better deal that close to the releasing your full price new sequel. So I'm going to guess that Borderlands 3 is probably like a year out from whenever they release the remasters.
I think that's a safe bet. Let's move on to some other games that were shown at PAX East. Probably the other big one was Wolfenstein Youngblood. We knew about this game. It wasn't debuted. In fact, I drafted this game on my team as well. The first trailer they put out for it was basically just a cinematic.
Yeah, just showed the 2 girls.
The 2 girls, and so you knew, okay, there's these 2 girls you're going to team up and play with. This at PAX, we finally get the first look at gameplay from it. Did you get a chance to check it out?
No, I'm doing that right now.
On-the-fly training. The one thing that strikes me about this is it appears that first-person, hand-to-hand stuff is going to be a bigger deal than it was in other Wolfenstein games.
Which makes some sense, I think, in the wake of Doom. I think the satisfaction of kind of Doom's like kills and close-up combat. It doesn't surprise me that has sort of found its way into Wolfenstein. Even like when I did replay Wolfenstein.
Which one?
Both of the
New Colossus.
New Order, the New Blood, New Order, was it? The first one and the second one, I didn't play the Old Blood.
Okay.
So New Order and the New Colossus.
Yep.
And I did feel like, I wish I could do the Doom thing where I run up and do some
more melee
stuff. So I feel like that's actually a pretty good addition.
Game looks ace.
Yeah.
It is. We have kind of figured out at this point though that it is a spin-off. It's not. It's kind of like a side game. It's not like a full-fledged sequel.
No, but I mean, it's BJ's daughters. I think was it like 20 years later.
Yeah. What was the other spin-off that they did? Blood.
They did the Old
Dragon?
Blood.
Dragon was
Blood Dragon's Far Cry.
Yeah.
Old Blood.
Old Blood was the spin-off.
Was the basically the remake of the original Wolfenstein.
Right.
Like basically the backstory of because New Order kind of implies that the BJ you're playing has been through the events of what we think of as the original Wolfenstein 3D in some form, and then Old Blood basically tells that story.
Gotcha.
So it's a prequel to the
and that's kind of what this is. It's like a side story. I don't know if the pricing is going to be cheaper yet.
I don't know. It wouldn't shock me if it was like 40 or something.
Yeah.
It feels it's sort of the new dawn of Wolfenstein.
Yeah.
Side story that's sort of a sequel that maybe isn't the next capital E entry, but like here's some fun stuff to kind of keep you busy.
I'll tell you though, Far Cry New Dawn ended up being big. Like I spent a lot of time playing that game for what was like a spin-off. I mean, I probably got close to 40 hours maybe.
Yeah, I'd say I was around there.
By the time it was all said and done. Yeah, I mean that doesn't feel like a spin-off to me. You get that much playtime out of a game.
No. Well, I probably liked it better than 5 overall. I found it less annoying in terms.
I liked some
story.
parts of it better, some parts worse. So probably as a wash for me. I liked both games.
I thought New Dawn had more fun weaponry, like the blade shooter and like I like the improvised weapon. Where like you can see kind of your sniper rifles made out of like an oxygen tank and like a screwdriver and stuff.
Some duct tape. Yeah.
Like it was fun. It's probably my favorite of the Far Cries since Primal.
What?
And I understand why it didn't sell tremendously well, just because it is more of the same. And they probably do need to really evaluate how they present the villains in these games. Yeah. They've been doing it the same since 2012, and I don't think it really works anymore.
Well, I think the problem
I still love running around shooting things and stealth. I mean, you give me a bow and arrow and outpost to take over, and I'm going to be happy.
I think the problem too is that they market those games. They market the villains extensively with those games, but then you play the game and you're like, wait a minute, where's the villain? You end up seeing them like 2 or 3 times throughout the course of the game, and they're not a big part of the story generally. So it's a little bit of false advertising.
There's got to be a way to integrate the main villains more into kind of the way the game unfolds. More, especially because at a certain point, like, it happened in New Dawn too, where there's points where like by the time like the later, there's always a later scene, maybe 2/3 through the game, where the villains kind of strike back at you, and like you get captured, or like they capture someone that's important to you, or they do something, and like there's a thing where like near the end of where you have that scene in New Dawn, and like to go in to see the twins, you basically get forced to put your weaponry in a bag before you go. I'm like, screw that!
Yeah,
I can go in there.
I didn't want to do it either.
These people aren't bulletproof. I guarantee you, I can kill these people before they can react to me. I mean, I just took down a giant zombie bear.
Yeah.
Like I'm pretty sure I can take down 2. Although when you fight them,
dudes with motocross armor.
Yeah. When you fight them, they do take more bullets than a
bull
elephant.
Oh yeah, they do.
It's a point at which you're like why is everyone so afraid of the half naked dude talking about God's plan? Just shoot him.
Yeah. Yeah.
You go talk to him and get one of the other 14 people at your camp that doesn't do anything all day to snipe him from about 100 yards out, and we got it. We're done. We're fine.
Yep. Let's move on to some other games. Streets of Rage 4. We got the first look at that. It had been known, and there was a teaser trailer out, but we got the first look at gameplay. This game made an impression. I saw a lot of people talking about it across social media.
Streets of Rage is good stuff.
It used to be. Yeah. We've seen some revivals of classic franchises over the last half decade that have not been great, though.
Yeah, but this looks pretty solid. It doesn't look like it's doing much beyond what Streets of Rage has always been, but I'm pretty much fine with that.
Yeah, I think at this point people are okay with that, though.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, if this is just a legit Streets of Rage game, I'm fine with that. And it appears to be that is exactly the case. Yep. It even has the same weird, like, animation juggles that the old games had. So whoever's working on this is doing a pretty good job at keeping it close to the source material, and obviously the visuals are much better than what we played back in the day. It's hard to believe that there's only been 3 of these games after all this time. Any other franchise that's been around that long would be at like number 8 or 10 by now, but not Streets of Rage.
No, Streets of Rage was just on the Genesis.
Yep.
That was the end of it.
Yep. So it's good to see that coming back. The game's looking pretty good. Next up, Divinity Fallen Heroes. So people know Divinity Original Sin. as as a genre that franchise is known for, but they're switching gears with this one.
Well, they go back. Divinity goes back. There was that Ego Draconis one.
Yeah,
Like they've gone through all that
right.
permutation. There was a strategy game based on dragon armies at one point. This franchise has been through a bunch of different versions.
But they've never had an XCOM clone.
No, but it seems like they finally found sort of a permutation that works with the original Sin series, and this seems to be spinning off that same aesthetic.
Yep, but it's basically XCOM set in the Divinity universe. The plot appears to be canon, and it will actually have some relevance to whatever happens later on in the franchise and other genres. So it has some heft to it as far as its value. The XCOM clone is quickly becoming the most overused genre in the industry, though. It is. I would like to see the stats on XCOM clones versus Battle Royale games to see which one is more popular at this point. There is a horror XCOM thing announced this week as well, which looks really cool. And I will say I'm not really burned out on that design yet. I haven't played enough of it to kind of get sick of it at this point. But it is starting to become, like, I know I have to write a lot of blurbs for curation on Sifted, and I'm to the point where I can't say it's blah, blah, blah in XCOM anymore. Because I've written it so many times, I'm like, all right, I need to find a new way to say this. But this is another one. I know a lot of people are pretty attached to the Divinity universe, and so maybe that will kind of crack this game open to an audience that other games in that genre don't enjoy. Do you think it's smart to do something like this, to kind of take a property and just completely change the genre?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think this supplants Original Sin 3, which I presume is in the works somewhere. You might as well do so. If you can kind of keep these things coming out, regularly, it's better to have the world and the franchise front of mind as much as you can. And these sort of games, I think, would tie in with someone who liked the original Sin games. They're not. I would assume someone who likes the Divinity original Sin games probably also likes XCOM. It's sort of a PC-centric, sort of strategy-driven thing.
It's also a character-driven thing. I mean, if you remember, even with XCOM, it's like you get attached to one of your characters and then they die, and it's like the permadeath. I don't know if this will have it. It's a little more dicey when you have characters involved that have been a part of the franchise for a while. It's kind of hard to kill them off and have permadeath. That would be brave if they did do that. But I think this isn't such a leap for people who have liked Divinity before. No. It's still going to focus on the characters that you've grown to love or hate through the years.
It's not a leap in the way it was for like Mario Rabbids.
Right. Yeah. So I think it looks pretty cool. I like XCOM games, and I will definitely give this one a spin as well. And like I said, they're prevalent. It's still not like first-person shooter or action RPG, but it's getting there. It's certainly becoming one of the more popular genres on PC at the very least. So let's see what's up next. Risk of Rain 2. Game had been talked about, rumored for quite a while. They showed a lot of gameplay for the first time at PAX East, but also had some big announcements. So the biggest announcement of all, at least in my opinion, is that if you buy this game on Steam, you get an extra code to give to a friend. So it's a cooperative loot shooter.
All right, yeah, because the first one was very cooperative.
Yep, and so is this one. It's I think it's up to 4 players, maybe more. I think they just show 4 in the trailer. Like,
if you weren't playing cooperative on the first one, you probably weren't getting anywhere.
Yeah, you weren't really playing it. Yeah, and it appears that this is the same case with this one. You're going to need to rely on friends and cooperative partners to get through the game. And to encourage people to play it cooperatively, you buy it, you get a second copy free that you can give to a friend. So you always have at least one partner to play the game with. It's kind of interesting to see a loot shooter like this instead of a big budget game like Anthem or Destiny. You don't see a lot of indie takes on this genre usually.
Yeah. But the first one was pretty well received.
I never played it. Did you play the first one?
No, but Rob Manuel loved it. So
and I trust Rob.
Yeah, he's my gauge for indie games I don't play.
Yeah, he's like the indie guru.
Yeah.
I love that he's kind of transformed into that. I did not play the first one at all, but you're right. People seem to really like it. And the hype around this game since it was shown at PAX has been huge.
Yeah. Well, I think, didn't it come out in early access?
Yeah.
So so people already can get their hands on it. Yep. So that'll always help, drive a conversation.
Yep, so it is available on Steam right now in early access. And like I said, if you buy it, you get a free copy. So if you feel like you don't have someone to play with, like I did with the Division 2, you don't have to worry about that with this game. You can just give your extra code to somebody else. I wonder how
they'll then give you excuses for why they can't play today.
Yeah, I wonder how they're going to keep people from just selling that code.
I don't know.
Maybe it's some kind of thing where you have to gift it through Steam, and you can't just like get the numbers and write them down and give it to somebody. I don't know.
I bet it won't work on the Epic Store.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
It's a great idea though to do something like that, particularly for a cooperative game where some people. I mean, this game could flop if people aren't playing together.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I mean, I've seen it where like you could buy you get a discount if you buy like 4 at once or whatever. But this is a bold move.
Buy one get one free. It's really bold. But you figure with indie games, your budgets aren't that big. Like you can kind of afford if the game goes nuclear, you can afford to give away some copies. Absolutely. So, and it's also that other like circle of friends thing where okay, 2 of you are playing this game now, even though only one person bought it. Maybe that convinces another friend to buy it and then give his code to somebody, and then you got the 4. And so I could see how they would look at it like maybe we can spread this game like a virus and ultimately become a big success. And of course, with any game like this, the X factor becomes, are there loot boxes? How is the loot handled? That's always the X factor with games in this genre, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And we never know that until a game has been out for a couple weeks. It takes a little while for people to figure out how the currency works, how you're rewarded for your play, and things like that. So I don't think we'll have a good grasp on that with this game for a while. But just the incentive of buy one, get one free, basically what you could do is you go to a friend and be like, you pay $15, I pay $15, just split it, and you both get the game for half the price. So I really like the idea. I like what they're doing with this game. I haven't played it yet, so I can't really pass judgment on it as far as how it plays and how they handle all the loot and everything. But based upon what I've seen, pretty cool. And then the last big indie game, at least in my estimation, that was shown at PAX East, and I'm sure somebody will complain that I didn't bring something else up. But the other big one that kind of caught my eye was a game called Cyber Shadow. And I described it on the site as a cross between Ninja Gaiden, Metroid, and Castlevania.
Yeah, I can see that. Although the main character reminds me of Ninja Spirit.
Yeah.
Which you only know if you played in the arcade or TurboGrafx 16.
Yep.
But he looks a lot like the Ninja Spirit guy.
But it's a side-scrolling ninja game.
Yeah.
But can you see where I get the Castlevania from, though?
Yeah, there's a quality of the graphics.
It's weird. It's almost got this weird kind of like grain to it that
like a lot of the Konami Ultra games had.
Yeah, I don't know how to explain it, but you look at it, you're like, that looks like Castlevania to me.
It looks like Castlevania or like Metal Gear, or there's a quality to how they do the sprites.
Yeah, the game looks hard as balls, by the way. So, if you're not one of those get good people, you may want to investigate this one a little more, but. A lot of 2D games are going for that angle now. And Dead Cell showed off a new DLC at PAX East, which we're not going to discuss, but worth mentioning at least. What were your overall impressions of PAX East? Do you think it was a good show?
It seemed to be. I mean, it had stuff that I noticed, even though I wasn't tremendously paying attention to what was happening over there.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty good sign. Like if some stuff popped up that I couldn't ignore. There was also some good stuff. It was separately, but like because it was also sort of happening at the same time. The Sega Fez thing.
Yeah.
Like there was a lot of good Sega stuff at the same time. So it was a good news week for kind of retro stuff and more low key indie stuff. And then if you're
Sega Genesis Mini, basically.
The Mini looks great. It looks great.
Yeah, it does.
Will be the first one of those kind of things of the Genesis I buy because they finally got. Some decent sound. They got was it the M2 guys doing that?
Yep, that's good.
And they got Castlevania Bloodlines in there, which is the first time Castlevania Bloodlines has ever been re-released in any form.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So yeah, I'm definitely on board for that one. That was a good announcement. I don't think that was I wasn't PAX, but like it was still sort of in the same days. But no, it was pretty good. I haven't been to a PAX in a very long time, probably since like 2014. But
yeah, it's been at least that long for me. Yeah.
But I like PAX.
I miss it, actually.
Yeah, I always like PAX. PAX is the one like kind of convention thing we would cover every year that I'm like, I'd go to this on my own.
Even if I didn't have to go to work for work,
Like it's a good. They were good places. They were good kind of positive places, and everyone was very friendly. The only time we ever had any problems with like jerks or whatever is when we go out to the bars in Boston at PAX East, and that wasn't PAX East attendees. That was just Boston people.
Like Sam.
Like I don't know. It's like there's
assholes.
Just people trying to start fights in bars for no reason. I don't know what the hell.
Starting fights with gamers.
Well, we were producers. We didn't. We weren't like. sitting there in our anime game shirts or anything. We're just trying to have a drink, and people are just like, "Hey, who are you?" It's just like, who are you?
Who cares?
Who cares?
I don't care who you are. Why do you care who I am? I think back, like I used to have to go to every convention, every event, and since I launched Sifted, I don't do hardly any of that anymore because there's just really no reason for us to go because it's really expensive and you end up getting the same stuff everybody else. There's just really little reason. Like the journalists who still go on these things, they're going because they want to travel and they want to. It's not
see
really
everybody. And
it's not for work.
It's not a social thing.
Yeah, it's not that they're going to get better coverage if they go.
And it became less and less useful as cameras became more. There was a time when we were like one of the 3 people with cameras at these things. Yeah. And now everybody's got a camera. Everyone's doing their own footage.
After the event's over, they put out their own interview that they shot and cut. And because they're all going off of a bullet-pointed list of what they can or cannot talk about, they provide the same information as GameSpot or IG. Yeah. There's just no reason. So
it's become like movie junkets.
Yeah.
Where everybody lines up in a hotel ballroom and asks the same question.
It even was starting to get to a point in some of these games events, they would do the same thing as some movie junkets where you didn't even bring your own crew.
Right.
They had everything set up. And you come in, and you do your interview, and then they just hand you the file.
Hand you the file,
yeah. They're like, we don't want your crews in here messing all this crap up.
When you think about it, it is a more efficient way to do it.
It is, but it makes it impossible to personalize your content. You're getting the same thing as everybody else. So once that started, I was like, and I'm launching Sifted, I'm like, there's no reason for us to spend money going to these things. So in hindsight, I'm like, okay, well, what conventions do I miss that I don't really attend anymore? And I don't really miss any of them. I went to all of them so many times that I had already gotten to the point where I'm not really seeing anything changing or anything new when I go to these anymore. The one that I do miss, though, is PAX. And unfortunately, it is a convention that does not happen in LA or San Francisco. It's all the way in Seattle. So the cost to go to that or to Boston is more expensive.
We got a Borderlands 3 box art reveal from Wario 64.
Rating pending. Did anyone ever figure out if Borderlands was rated M?
I guarantee you it's an M.
Yeah. But PAX is the one that I do miss. It's the one that I wish I would still go to if I could rationalize it from a business perspective. But, I can just look at the traffic on Sifted during any of the PAXs, and that's enough to tell me that going there for work is not a good decision.
Yeah.
It's mostly indie stuff, and people don't really watch that
Well, I
very
used to feel that way also when we cover like E3 and stuff on G4, and like we'd be having the crews roaming around the floor. But then I'd see some kid with like a monopod and a phone, like taping the same thing or whatever. I'm just like, he's gonna have that up before we do.
Oh yeah, way before.
Like he's gonna put that up now.
Yeah.
We
literally from his cell phone.
Yeah, we got to take it to the edit trailer, and then we got to bring it back and air it at like 5 p.m. this afternoon. And by that point, it's going to be old news.
That was one of the things that we did at GT. Another thing that we did first was shooting off screens. We were like the first people to do it. Like get good cameras, hire crews, and just shoot stuff off screens.
Yeah, I remember because that was like, it was verboten for a long time. And finally, I'm like, we can't get footage of this like directly, so just shoot off the screen. And like the bosses were like, well, I'm like, Game Trailers does it all the time, and Game Trailers is kicking our ass. So let's go ahead and do it. So like,
And we got good at it. Like all our camera crews got really good at balancing the image. We got really good at capturing audio from it. We'd take lav mics just to tape to the speakers, and like sometimes it was hard to tell that we had shot the stuff off screen.
And I remember there would be times where I'm like, here, this is off the screen. And they're like, that's not off the screen. I'm like, it is off the screen. Like, people couldn't tell. Some people couldn't tell.
Something else that we did that everyone started copying. And then after we did that for a while, we were like, because you're right, you start thinking about it, you're like, why are we going to take this back to the edit bay? We have to bring somebody in to do a stand-up to introduce it. We have to shoot that. We have to send all that back in. It has to be cut. It was just like, why? And so we started when developers, instead of doing interviews, we were like, no, you play the game and talk while you play the game. And we started developer walkthroughs, and now everybody does that when they go to events. They let the developer play through the game, and now it's a thing. So it is crazy how you start to reevaluate how you start covering that stuff as what the industry gives you starts to change. And because of that, because the industry was like, look, everyone's getting the same thing. Like, it got to the point where I would go and do interviews the way I had always done them, and people would pull me aside afterwards and be like, hey, like, that's really not what we're going for here. I'm like, I don't care what you're going for. I know what we want. I know what coverage we want. And if you're not going to answer the questions, that's fine, but I'm going to ask them. And once I started getting resistance and pushback, like, bro, you're asking questions that other people aren't asking, and you're not falling in line, I was like, well, with Sifted, why would I ever do that? It's like, we can't get anything that anybody else can't. There's no point to go. So, but PAX is the one convention that I wish I was still able to go to. But from a money perspective, from a time perspective, it just doesn't make sense for me to do it. So it'd be great if they ended up doing one in SoCal, but the PAX West is in Seattle, so it just seems like that's where they're from.
Yeah, and it's a close enough flight from California. I don't see a need for a California one.
Well, it's still a 3-hour flight to Seattle. I mean, you got to realize, like,
on the guys live there, though, so...
Right, but on the East Coast, there isn't even really a 3-hour flight. Like, you can fly from Philly to Florida, Miami, in, like, an hour and 40 minutes. So, like, on the East Coast, every flight is short. A 3-hour flight on the West Coast, that's pretty long, actually.
Yeah. I just don't see it happening.
You can do it, though. It's like, I am, right now, I counted it yesterday, I have worked 19 days straight without a day off. Like, I just don't have time off. So for me to say, oh, I'm going to go up to Seattle for 4 days and hang around and play a game, like, it's just not even an option for me. Even though I know I could go there and get coverage that no one would ever watch, it's just not worth it. So I do miss PAX. I don't really miss Tokyo Game Show. I miss Tokyo. I don't miss Tokyo Game Show.
No.
I would miss E3 if it were to go
Tokyo Game Show was always the excuse to go.
Right, yeah. I just want to go to Japan.
Yeah.
I would miss E3 if it went away. All the other stuff, though, like Game Awards and all, I don't care about any of that stuff anymore. I just don't. I've done it so many times. It's like, let the people who haven't gone go, you know? Let them experience it.
I'm kind of hitting that point with E3, too. So.
Really? You're almost at the breaking point with E3?
I would be kind of fine, like, for E3, like, watching the press conferences, going to the parties, hanging out, like, out off the floor at, like, the places, like, I know, like, people I know hangs out, but, like, and has their meetings and does their things. The show floor just isn't really all that useful to me anymore.
Yeah. Because you got to wait in line to play everything. You can't just walk up and play stuff anymore.
Well, it's also so crowded now that, like, I don't even see people. Because that was one of the other things, like, I could walk the floor and, like, you run into, just walk across any hall, and I'd run into, like, 6 people I knew on the way across.
Yeah.
And now you don't, because, like, A, it's so crowded, and B, a lot of the people I know that I would see that way don't go to the floor anymore because it's so crowded.
Better. Yeah, it's interesting, too. Plus, it used to be back in the Game Trailers days, if I was at E3 and I walked across the floor, it was just constantly people going, Shane from Game Trailers. Like, people don't know who I am at all anymore. No. I can walk through E3 and nobody even bats an eyelash now. It's nice. I mean, it's not that fans bother me or ever did, but it was like a lot of times you're trying to work and you're walking with a crew of like 4 people and you're fighting through and you're trying to get your talent set up and people are like asking you and like, it made doing the job a lot more difficult. Now I can go to E3 and just waltz on through. And meanwhile, I'll see like the YouTuber walk by and the group of people following the YouTuber, and I'm like, have fun.
Yeah.
Have fun with that. It's interesting how things have changed. But one thing that hasn't changed is that PAX is an awesome convention. And we've said it before on the show, but if there's one thing that you go to in the U.S., PAX should be the one that you go to. It's the one where you're going to actually meet with other people like you. You're going to actually get to play games. You're going to be able to hang out. It's not this weird, like, there are lines.
And they also kind of...
But there's stuff to do when you're not in line there.
They also do decent late night stuff.
Yeah.
Which is like, a lot of conventions kind of shut down around 9.
Yep.
But...
like, PAX spills out into Seattle.
Yeah.
So all the bars and restaurants around it, all the people are there, all the people you saw at the show are there. At E3, after E3 ends, it's just like a ghost town. Where'd all those people go? A lot of them go back to work or whatever.
Some go to work, some of them go back to LA. LA Live is a place. But a lot of it, people go back to, a lot of them stay in like Hollywood, like, which is further away from downtown LA than you think it is if you've never been here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like people that kind of go off to do their own thing.
It's LA.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff to do here, and a lot of it's out of downtown.
Yeah. So. Almost all of it is out of downtown.
It's amazing to see, like, there's people I know who like basically come here basically for E3 and that's it, and like their entire mental picture of LA is downtown LA,
which is not the least LA part of LA. Yeah.
Like I remember taking some like they came to the G4 office. We went to go get lunch and we walked down to where we're going, and we walked from the old G4 office. It was a neighborhood. It was and they're like, oh my God, there's trees and houses. I'm like, yes, people live here. It's not Blade Runner. I don't.
There are a lot of misconceptions about LA from people who have never been here. So anyway, letter grade for PAX East 2019. What do you give it?
I didn't pay enough attention to grade it.
Wow.
I don't feel qualified.
I feel like it was an average PAX, so I'll give it a C.
All right.
It had like a couple big games, AAA games, and then mostly indie stuff. None of the indie stuff blew my mind. It all looks solid and good, but nothing blew my mind, so it gets a C for me. Mm-hmm. Only one grade for this one.
Yeah, I should note that like I had a very busy week for a lot of unforeseen reasons, so I am not as up on things as I normally am, but I will try to remain entertaining.
You're pretty good at that. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about a game that I don't think is ever going to happen.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But reports are stating, and from reliable sources, that George R.R. Martin of Game of Thrones fame, well, not Game of Thrones fame, the Song of Ice and Fire, is that the name of the book?
Yeah, that's the name of the book series, yeah.
The author of the Game of Thrones books is working on a game with From Software. Is there a more unlikely marriage on the face of planet Earth than somehow George R.R. Martin coming into contact with From Software?
I don't know, like the dark fantasy thing is kind of in place there. I see how it makes sense, but it's one of those things where it's like, I hope you don't have him on a deadline because it's just not gonna.
That's why I don't believe it's true.
To be fair, he'd only have to write like maybe like a quarter of a book, and they just pepper it through and like
not even a quarter.
Little notes through the whole
thing. Books are gigantic.
Little notes through the whole thing, and you're done. Yeah. Like, I mean, it could be something as simple as like they're gonna have him come up with the premise or something.
That's possible.
You know, like.
And then slather his name on it like he did more than he actually did.
But other people are going to actually write this stuff. You know what I mean? Kind of like what happened with Kingdoms of Amalur, where they brought in, what's his name, R.A. Salvatore to like do the world and kind of design the narrative of what it was. And then I think most of the game was actually written by
folks that were at the studio.
Yeah, studio people. So I could see it be like that because you don't want to depend on this man for the actual script. I don't think because. The dude, look, I mean, I know everybody's mad.
You don't want to depend on him for anything.
Right. Well, I know everybody's mad at him for he's not getting these books out of her, but it's like, look, man, if I was in my 60s or whatever, and I'd be toiling away on these stupid fantasy books my whole life, and finally one of them hit it big, and like I had all this money and everybody knew who I was, I could do whatever I wanted. Hell yeah, I wouldn't sit down and write for the rest. I'd be like, fuck, I'm gonna travel and do my thing, and then I'm gonna die, and then you all can fuck off.
Pretty much.
That's basically what I think. It's basically. I mean, I think he'll get the next one out like next year or something. But will we ever see the final book 7? No way.
No way. Honestly,
especially once the show ends this year, and he's like, "Oh, it'll be different," but who cares? I
think what happened.
Go watch the show. You're done.
Once the show lapped him, he had no incentive anymore to finish the books. It's like, wait a minute, you know the story now. Because I told the producers of the show what's going to happen.
They have the framework of whatever.
Yeah, they know what he's going to write.
And I think it's also a combination of like I think he's might be kind of waiting to see how they end it. And then I think he's going to do something different.
Because people, inevitably, a certain segment of the fans are going to be angry. Right. And so he'll pacify them by giving them the ending that the half of the fans that are angry wanted.
Oh, I don't think that's what will happen.
No?
No, he doesn't give a shit about what the fans want.
Oh, okay, good.
He's just he'll just decide what he doesn't like about how they end the show, and he'll write it his way. Even if it's completely different from what he originally intended. Because remember, this is also the man who got very annoyed that people guessed the Jon Snow twist.
Right.
Even though it was like foreshadowed from like book 1. Like it was like, if you are paying attention at all reading those books, you know basically where he's going with that. And it annoyed him that people called that.
Well, and I'm like, but
that just means you wrote it correctly.
Right.
Like that just
you did
means
a good
you
job.
knew where you were going.
Yeah.
Like, but
it's called foreshadowing.
Yeah.
If you go back and watch the first 2 seasons of Game of Thrones now, it will blow your mind at the foreshadowing that is in there.
It's all there.
All of it.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like that plan was so in place when they started.
Yeah. It's called good storytelling. It's the opposite of what Lost did.
It is. No, you're right. And it's the opposite of what's happening with The Walking Dead and a lot of other big shows. So
you can't tell a mystery story if you don't know who done it.
Yeah, it's true.
JJ.
Yeah. So back to what you were saying, though, this actually is kind of a perfect marriage. Because if you look at like Dark Souls, that world kind of matches with Game of Thrones. It's this dark fantasy, sci-fi-ish, but very dark, brooding, gritty. I mean, this could be a Game of Thrones game.
It wouldn't take too much of adaptation, right down to the giant raven everywhere.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like it's like, why wouldn't From just make a Game of Thrones video game?
Yeah, it could work.
It could really work.
Yeah.
And I don't know who has the license for that right now. I mean, it's probably floating out there right now.
I don't know. I have no idea.
Because Telltale, obviously.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone's working on something directly because they did the action RPG, and Telltale did their thing. Yeah, I don't know who has that.
I mean, it could be just maybe that's what's happening.
Could be.
Maybe they're making a Game of Thrones video game.
I mean, they would have to. If they're only involved with him, it would have to be a Song of Ice and Fire game.
Right. Yeah.
That doesn't draw on the. It'd be like how you remember how there were like back in the day the license for the Lord of the Rings movies was different from the license for the books, so there were games coming out at the same time that were based on the books, but not the movies.
That's right. So I do remember that. Yeah, and it got really confusing.
Yeah, like there was like a Fellowship of the Ring, but it wasn't based on the books. So it had like Tom Bombadil in it, and there was an RTS. There was an RTS like War of the Ring that came out around the same time as like the Battle for Middle Earth games, but they were not based on the movies, so they were completely quote original designs that were based on the wars in the books.
Right.
So it could be something like that, but I don't know how their licensing setup works. But the other thing is like,
well, it looks like Daedalus somehow got Lord of the Rings.
We probably never need to worry about this.
Really?
In terms of him, I don't mean maybe they'll put it out if he's doing like a consultant thing, and that's probably going to happen. But like, what is this? What are they doing? Is it a new series? Probably. Is it Game of Thrones? Probably not, because I think they'd really need to have HBO's involvement if that happened.
Which they could. I mean,
they could, but I feel like that would have been announced as part of it as well.
Yeah, because they're coming into the final season here a couple weeks. I can't believe it's 2 weeks away from the final season of Game of Thrones.
Yeah, chances are I think we're dealing with if this thing ends up existing, it's going to be a new IP that just has his name all over it. George R. R. Martin's...
something of Ice and Fire or something.
George R. R. Martin's dimly lit spiritual spirits or something like that.
I mean, if it's up to scratch, which it's a From game, which means it probably will, I mean, do you think it would sell better than Bloodborne and Dark Souls and Sekiro?
I don't know.
Or do you think fans would reject it because it was based on some other IP?
I don't think it would be based on some other IP. I think it'd be a new thing.
But let's say it's based on the books. Do you think From Software fans would embrace it or reject it?
I don't know. It depends what it was. If it was just another Souls game hosed down in Game of Thrones juice, then probably.
They would reject it?
They would take it.
They would take it, yeah. But then you wonder, okay, if you make this game, can it be a From Software game? Because you think of how many casual people are going to pick it up and play it?
Yeah, I mean, this might be the real test of From putting an easy mode in something.
Right, yeah.
But I don't think it's Game of Thrones. I think it's a new thing. Just going to have his name on it.
That's weird.
Well, I don't know if he even has the rights to do that.
That's true. Well, I mean, he probably has the rights for the books, right? He hasn't given those up.
I think he sold the rights to adaptations and stuff to HBO. I mean, I think they control that for the most part.
Interesting.
And also, like, if you do that, that would just be confusing. Or okay, so like Jamie doesn't look like himself, and nobody looks like the actors. Like, I feel like that would cause more confusion than just making something new.
Which was a problem with the Lord of the Rings stuff. Yeah.
Like, it makes more sense to me to just like have him come up with some world and characters, and they can just turn it into a game along the lines of what they do. And sure, more From Software, cool. Or they could just completely pull the rug out from under us, and he's doing Armored Core 7.
That's true.
Who knows?
I would say this, though. Typically, when you bring in people from outside games to work on stuff like this, it usually doesn't work out very well. Like, if you just take their name, it's fine. Tom Clancy, fine. Slap his name on a military shooter, makes sense.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, that's how he had been operating for years already.
Right.
He hadn't written his own books in, like, 10 years.
Who, Tom Clancy?
Yeah,
he's just putting his name
on. By the
on
time Ubisoft started making all that stuff, it was like he was a brand. He was not the author, really.
But you look at Del Toro, his many forays into games, none of it has ever worked out.
Yeah, well, he tries.
He tries, but that's what I'm saying. It just seems like it never works out as well as you would expect whenever something like that happens.
Yeah, but this isn't like trying to get a major film director in. I mean, Boom Blocks was pretty good.
It was.
That was Spielberg.
But I question how much he had to do with that game.
Well, exactly. That's kind of how I feel about this. Is like, he's probably going to write up some stuff on some napkins, and they'll get to slap his name on the box.
He'll make a couple million.
From the creator of Game of Thrones, here's,
From Software's next game.
From Software's next title. Soul Games. Soul Games of Seats of Power.
Soul Games of Thrones. Yeah, so what probability would you put on it that this rumor is true?
Oh, is it just a rumor
percentage? Now? I mean, it is just a rumor. It hasn't been officially announced by From or anyone else.
I don't know. I mean, it makes. I'd probably give it like a 50-50. It makes sense.
Yeah.
It's not a partnership that makes me go what?
Yeah.
Like it would be.
I mean, it's weird that they're this kind of niche Japanese developer, and somehow they've found each other. That's strange to me, but kind of awesome.
The way From kind of works, I can see George R. R. Martin thinking of himself sort of as a similar thing.
Yeah.
Even though his thing is the biggest TV show in history or whatever.
Yeah.
But I can see him still thinking of himself as sort of like the dark fantasy niche guy.
Right.
And like, so that would, when you present like what From Software is to him, he's like, oh, and show him some Dark Souls footage, he'd be like, oh yeah, that's totally what.
Or show him footage of me playing Dark Souls.
Yeah.
Be like, oh yeah, that's right in my wheelhouse.
I want to make everybody that angry.
Yeah, I would put it also at about 50-50. Seems it's plausible. Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't surprise me, but it also wouldn't surprise me if it was like maybe they had a meeting and someone reported that and it didn't, it doesn't turn into anything. We never hear about it again. That could happen.
Yeah. And speaking of which, it wasn't in the first episode because the first episode was all about Google Stadia. But the second episode of Pactor Factor from the round we just shot, he goes in depth about what happened with the whole Sony Take-Two rumor, which is interesting. So look for that next week, Sifters, in next week's Pactor Factor.
Yeah, he did kind of have a ground floor
He
view
definitely
of that.
did. He has an interesting story to tell about what happened there. So look for that next week. Let's move on. We're going to talk next about April Fools.
Yep.
For whatever reason, the gaming industry has embraced April Fool's Day like no other entertainment industry. I don't know why.
I think it comes out of that EGM tradition. Back when EGM used to do those April Fools, it would like fool people. They put tons of effort into it. There was the classic Shenlong joke.
Yeah, I mean, they did great one. They did good ones.
I mean, when they put that issue out, like I went to the arcade and everybody was trying to do that.
Yeah.
Like that, like everybody, because there was a picture.
Yeah.
No one had ever done that before.
No one had ever done a bull shot
Yeah.
before.
I mostly enjoy the April Fool's stuff. Like I don't really understand why like people get so mad about it. Like
yeah, I don't either.
Like people get so angry and like, oh, it's stupid lies day, and it was like just sit,
go with it.
Just sit back for a day, for God's sake. It's fun. Like
it is fun. Like when I started working at GameSpot back in 2000, I got the first taste of video game April Fools. Mm-hmm. Like I was a news editor. I was writing up news stories, and I would literally write like 30 news stories a day. Like, because they just sent a press release, and we just rewrite the press release. And then we call and try to get a quote. They'd always say, we're not going to give you a quote. And I just run with whatever we had. And the first April Fools, I was head down, cranking through news stories. And another day where I had to like write 30 news stories in a day. And one of the stories that I sent on to my editor was an April Fool's joke. And I had no idea. Like, I had no idea it was a thing in the games industry. And it was reported on by like IGN or something like that. And I'm like, well, it's an IGN story. They vet all their stuff. It should be good. Sent it to my editor, and he emails me back. He's like, this is an April Fool's joke. And I was like, really? And he's like, oh, absolutely. And I was like, I had no idea. So that was my indoctrination into the gaming April Fool's thing. And it has just kept going year after year. Like, do movies really do stuff like this?
Sometimes you get like a fake fan film of something or a trailer or something, but not too much.
Like the actual studios will do it, or a fan will do it?
Both.
Okay.
Like sometimes you'll get stuff from studios. The other thing that happens a lot is like they'll like the April Fools will go up and like people will actually like it and like
it'll turn into a real product.
Thing. I think like the original one I can think of for that was when I think was it Think Geek did the Tauntaun sleeping bag.
Oh, right.
And that became a real thing within like a year. I
can understand why that would be.
And then BioWare, one of their previous April Fool's jokes became a real thing. This April Fool's, they started selling Garrus body pillows, life-size Garrus body pillows.
Did they?
Yeah, because that was a joke a year or two ago, and you can actually buy them now.
Interesting. So there were literally dozens and dozens of jokes yesterday.
I mean, the main problem, I guess, is that a lot of them are just dumb.
Yeah.
Like if like a really well produced or well thought out one can be one of the best things of the year sometimes.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's just like like the Kirby thing was pretty good.
I didn't even see that.
They did like a Kirby Box Boy swap thing.
I didn't even see
Kirby
that.
was going to be a square now, basically.
Oh, I totally missed that.
But it was like a Box Boy reference.
That sucks. We're not going to talk about it. I missed that somehow.
So I think that was the first one I saw, even though I couldn't quite get like some. I remember what the tweet was. But some tweet was like I woke up this morning and Elon Musk had put out a song about Harambe the Gorilla and Jim Carrey is in a beef with the granddaughter of Mussolini, and like neither of those were jokes, so I don't know how to do April Fools anymore. I don't know what's real anymore. So
that's funny. Well, there were a bunch of April Fools gags, trailers, jokes, whatever you want to call it. And a lot of these are, in fact, all of these are on Sifted, and we're just going to go through them. And these are the ones that I kind of picked as my favorites. So this is the Control Technicolor filter. Stuff like this is pretty obvious. Like, you know right away that this is not going to be in the actual game.
Oh, I bet it will be.
Oh, you think it will be?
I bet you can have like an extra or something. So. Why not? If they did it.
Yeah, I mean, if it's already there, why not? Stuff like this, though, it's like, it's pretty easy to pull off. It's kind of like the lowest hanging fruit for April Fool's jokes. Like, I
always like the ones that send people on the goose chase, like EGM's the Shenlong, or when they did the one of Sonic and Tails being in Smash Brothers. Like, those are my favorites. And
now here's IGN's. Now this one, I would say, required the most work. Did you see this?
This is the fake Direct thing?
Yeah, so IGN did a fake Nintendo Direct, and they did a really, really good job on it. They've got all the beats, they've got all the sound effects, and the story. And again, what usually gives a lot of these away is the fact that whatever they're announcing is so unbelievable that you just know it's not true. And that was the case with this. Basically, the whole story is every Zelda game ever is coming to Switch. And the title of it was Everything's Coming to Switch. But the way that they cut it together, the aesthetics of it, they pretty much nailed the whole thing. So I thought IGN did a pretty good job. No other outlets really even tried.
Yeah.
So
the only issue with it is like, this would be great if it actually happened. So you're a little sad that it's not real.
There's that hint of melancholy in the background that's always pervading.
But the best humor always has.
It does. A little tinge of it. Yeah. But I thought this was a great job by IGN. Again, like the graphics are all identical, and I'm sure they just ripped them from the real Directs or whatever.
That's still like some After Effects guy worked a long time on
Absolutely. Yeah, and they even had like the ESRB thing at the beginning. Like they went the full Monty. And I was pretty impressed with what IGN did. It's certainly a lot more complicated than like this. So this is Rainbow Six Siege. Rainbow is magic. And I think this it's been very hard to figure out whether a lot of this stuff is actually in the game or not. Because always they act like it's in the game. But then some of them are. Like For Honor had like Rabbids in it yesterday. And it was actually in the game. Like, you could actually go play For Honor, and there were Rabbids in the game just for that day. Now, this rainbow skin for Rainbow Six, is it in? I don't know. I didn't boot it up to check it out, but
it looks real legit.
All of this stuff does, though. Yeah. And here is Rage. Rage's thing was, we're turning it into NBA Jam. And so they got the announcer from NBA Jam to basically narrate this trailer. And it's called, like... Rage 2 on fire, on fire cheat code, and they've set it up like NBA Jam, like it. Again, awesome. Like I love that publishers were like, you know what, we're gonna dedicate some budget to this, and we're gonna like work with the development team, and then we're gonna have like an editor cut this thing to get. Like I love that publishers take the time to do this, despite the fact that they are under the gun to get the actual video game done. And this, you should watch this trailer.
Hopefully this means Rage 2 is in pretty good shape.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Maybe it is a sign that it's moving along according to schedule. I highly recommend watching this. The actual guy who does the NBA Jam voiceover voices this trailer, and they do a really clever job with it. Here is Hearts of Iron 4, and they did like a Sharknado thing.
Which is extra funny if you know this game at all, because it's a super dry map-based strategy game.
Yeah, it's like a 4X strategy game. It is. It's super dry. It's like historical. And they were like, you know what? We're just going to do a Sharknado thing, which I think is great. And it shows that they don't take themselves too seriously. And like they went all in. It's like you could have just done the cinema. They showed the Sharknado. But then they actually went in and like messed with like the other parts of the game. I think that's awesome.
Sharkstorm.
Yeah. And then next and final is Final Fantasy XIV Smart Home Assistant. So Square Enix made a fake commercial for like a Google Home Assistant or an Alexa, but it's for Final Fantasy XIV, and this is the best one as far as comedic value is concerned. because the Home Assistant, it acts like it lives in like Final Fantasy 14. So everything it says has some kind of like medieval like context to it, or some way it relates it to high fantasy. So it's like, oh, I need toothpaste, and it'll be like, oh, but we use blah 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 to brush our teeth or whatever. So I thought this was probably the most clever and fun, and definitely the one that took the most effort, money, and commitment. And there was a couple other ones. There was like Payday. The guys from Payday did a fake like Payday Royale, like a battle royale for Payday. There's
those guys should probably just concentrate on surviving.
Absolutely, yeah, they're in bad shape. Like they don't have the time to do something like that. And then there was one that people are still confused on whether it's real or not, and that was R-Type Final 2.
I thought that was real.
Some people think it's real.
The downside of April 1st is that it's the day after the fiscal year ends.
Yeah.
You know, so a lot of things do get announced that day that are real, but you don't know. Like, what,
yeah,
that is. True. I guess that is kind of the real frustration. Is like you want to say stuff the day after your fiscal year ends, but you're like, oh, I guess we better wait till the 2nd. You know.
I highly recommend watching this. By the way, it's on Sifted. You can look for Final Fantasy 14's page, or just search for Final Fantasy 14. It'll come up. It is really, really funny. And my winner for Best April Fools. But I didn't see the Kirby Box Boy thing, unfortunately.
The Kirby thing was not as like heavily produced. It's not as big. It was just kind of a neat. I just thought it was funny that they're like, okay, our big announcement is that Kirby is a square now. Like I think that's funny. Like,
yeah, on a very base level, I can see that. So there you go. That's April Fool's Day in video games 2019. They've done it again, and they're going to keep doing it probably until I'm long gone. They'll still be doing April Fool's Day gaming. I still think it's odd that just gaming does this, though.
Not everybody does. Like, tons of companies do it. Like, all through Twitter. I mean, especially if you pay attention to Twitter. Like, all the fast food ones had some, McDonald's did the all-pickle burger, which pissed a bunch of people off because I guess a bunch of people actually do want an all-pickle burger. It's called the McPickle. It was like a Big Mac, but the patties were replaced with just chunks of pickle slices. It's pretty. I mean, that's the thing is like I think that's where some of the rage comes from. It's just like, you have these like humorless like giant mega corporations, and all of a sudden they think they're funny for one day a year, and often they are not.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
in fact,
but every once in a while,
always they are
the
not.
1 out of 1,000 that's like a really good one that kind of makes it worth it to me.
Like Wendy's Twitter account's pretty funny.
But
that's like every day.
There's a pretty good one from Arby's too. Arby's is pretty on point most of the time.
You know, somebody told me this week that I never realized Arby's is RB for roast beef.
Yeah, roast beef.
I never knew that.
Learn
something new every day.
That's your miles per hour for me.
I never knew that.
It took me almost 10 years to figure that out.
I never knew it. And somebody like posted it on Facebook the other day, and I was like, really?
Yeah, Arby's I knew.
It does kind of make sense.
Tails' real name took me almost a decade to understand because of the way EGM wrote it.
Right. Yeah. It's funny, though, how EGM back in the day just set the tone for everything. Like, they were the Bible, man. Like,
yeah, well, it was their Sonic 2 preview, and they said they were going through, and Tails was kind of a thing because, like, oh, Sonic's got a friend. Like, that was weird. That it was before, we didn't know yet what the Sonic friend thing was going to turn into. But they said his name was Miles Tails Prower. Get it? And I was like, no, I don't. What does that mean? And it wasn't until Sonic Adventure where they just said Miles Prower without the tails in the middle.
Right.
Like, oh, Miles Prower. And so that was like most of my life, half my life I spent not understanding Tails' name joke.
It is hard to believe, though, that there was a time in this industry where one publication just ruled everything. Yeah. And I was watching a podcast the other day where it was like a podcast with this skater named Mike Vallely. And he's old school. He's been around since like the early days. And he started telling a story about when he first started getting into skating. He went over to some kid's house and the kid had a Thrasher magazine. And Thrasher was the same way for skateboarding. Like, it was just this thing that came out every month, and the ads that were in, you knew every issue front to back. You knew every ad that was in it. You knew everything. And it's,
I mean, I wasn't even into skating, but I knew Thrasher.
Yeah, and EGM was the same way. It was just this Bible for this scene that just basically dictated how it was perceived from the outside and from the inside.
It was like 1990, like 94. It was basically like EGM was the end all.
Yeah,
be all,
it's crazy.
At least in English publications.
We'll never see anything like that ever again. No. Like, it just won't happen with just the way media is now, and the 24-hour news cycle and everything. Like, it was just a moment in time.
And it was just like the prominence of some of that. So it was, I mean, I remember one E3 when we were getting outside journalism help because we had expanded, and it was the Santa Monica one. It was when everything was moved out to Barker, and they assigned me to basically be the producer who would go around. So we had journalists, like actual game journalists, doing the interviews and kind of doing the sit-down stuff with the prominent people. And I remember, like, I was assigned to Dan Shu. And I was like, holy shit, I'm working with Dan Shu. Like, I was a little starstruck. I mean, I've met, like, real celebrities and all this stuff, but I was working with Dan Shu.
You're working with Shu.
Working with Shu was like, you know, the guys that, like made me kind of, like, go, oh, my God, was, like, Dan Shu and, like, Andy Eddy and like the guys I read. Sushi X. That was everybody. But that was like, you know, the guys I read growing up were like, oh, like what does Shu think about this game? I want to know what he thinks.
You cared
about
what
this
he
game.
thought. Yeah, absolutely.
And now I'm producing his interview with Kazurai. It was crazy.
And now he's working at Blizzard.
Yeah. But no, EGM, the cachet of EGM was for the little window was huge.
Mega. Huge. Absolutely. It started this. We're talking about April Fools on a video game podcast in 2019 because of EGM.
Largely because of that.
That's crazy. So there you go. All right, let's move along. We got a lot to get to still and not a ton of time left. Let's see what's up next. We're going to talk about another rumor that came out, but this one I believe like 100%. And that is, I'm sorry. I'm so conditioned to not share this. And that was Jason Schreier reported this week that both the PlayStation 5 and the next Xbox, if you want to call it Xbox 2 or whatever, are going to be more powerful than Google Stadia. So Google Stadia is at what, 10.2
something like it's like almost 11 teraflops.
Almost 11 teraflops. Right now, Xbox One X is what, 5 teraflops? 4.5 teraflops?
Sounds right. I don't remember.
It's ish.
Yeah.
It's around there. So Stadia already more than doubles both Xbox One X and PlayStation 4 Pro.
Although that is kind of bringing it up into the high-range cards that are, you know, coming up. I mean, that's not crazy. It's a little more than I would expect because I kind of always expect the console. I expect the consoles to kind of lowball on that a little bit. But if that's, I mean, this is exactly what I think they should be doing. If you're going to make the leap now, you better make it worth it, and you better have some ray tracing capability in there.
Yeah. My question though is, okay, first of all, do you believe it? Do you believe these and look, Jason Schreier, stone cold lock usually. His information is almost always perfect. So I don't want to say that I'm second-guessing Jason here. That's not what I'm trying to do. But it just, to me, it just seems so far-fetched.
Doesn't seem like it to me at all.
Really?
I think that's exactly what they have to do. Like, I think that's exactly what, if you're going to jump in and do this, they have to be that powerful.
But then the question becomes, how much do they cost?
I think they're going to cost $500.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know how you can make a box with that kind of hardware for $500 and not lose your ass.
Good question.
That's why I don't think it's true. And again, I hate to second-guess Jason Schreier. I mean, to me, these consoles are going to cost like $700.
No, they aren't going to be more than $500.
I mean, you can't charge $700 for a console.
Here's the thing.
But that's what you'd have to charge to not completely lose your ass.
No, I think you're overestimating the cost of that. It's not that crazy. And also keep in mind that, like, you know, you're talking about a high cost there anyway. Even if you are just talking about $500, that's a lot of money anyway.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying here is, like, they might, you know, the console manufacturer, like Sony and Microsoft, might not be married to the kind of the traditional idea of, like, okay, we're launching the new system, we got to get those sales out there immediately, we got to jump, we got to have a huge launch. If they're moving more into kind of the cell phone iteration version of kind of how generations are going to work from now on, they might be comfortable with a slow burn. And Microsoft has already shown...
That's been tough on Apple, though.
It has been tough on Apple, but, like, this is a different world, and Microsoft has shown that they are not unhappy with the slow burn of the Xbox One X. And if you recall, when that came out, we were both sort of like, well, who is this for exactly?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if and it's definitely sold better than we thought.
Yeah.
And better than Microsoft
that,
thought to some degree. So, you know, you might be just looking at, like, you know, is it unusual that this sort of, like, power level would be in these next generation's consoles in previous generations? Yes. Is it necessarily untrue because that was true in the past? No, because we're looking at a paradigm shift. And we're looking at a very intentional paradigm shift. And if they know something like Google Stadia is coming down the pipeline, then they might be doing this intentionally to kind of like head that off. And then that's not even factoring in whatever Microsoft's streaming plans are. And I assume Sony has their own streaming plans with place. The Gaikai tech isn't going away.
Yeah.
And you're going to want to do a thing where if you do jump into sort of a Stadia-style streaming situation, you're not going to want the games that come through on that streaming to outclass the things that the people who paid for your hardware get at home.
Yeah.
So I think that they are going to go bigger with these systems in terms of power.
Well, I think they have to, because that's the only way you're going to ever beat the law of diminishing returns that we've kind of fallen into with the last 2 generations.
Right. And I think that's also part of it. Is like you need to show something with these new systems that make people go, wow, my current system can't do that.
Because if you look, the numbers are on the decline as far as consoles sold per generation. They have been since the PS2 era. How do you stop that?
Well, I don't agree with that as a useful metric, but because I think you're always going to have outliers, and I think the PS2 was a ridiculous outlier, and I think the Wii was a ridiculous outlier for completely different reasons.
Yeah.
You're never going to have another PS2. Like, the PS2 was just the perfect system at the perfect price point at the perfect time with the perfect games and a DVD player built in when everybody wanted a DVD player. It was just, you're never going to get that again. You know, same way the Wii was like the perfect fad at the moment that it was. You can't predict that. You just can't. You can't expect that every time. And I know that's anti-capitalist or whatever, because everything has to be bigger than the last thing you delivered to your shareholders, but it's just not how it's going to work. And at the very least, we can see that the software sales market is very healthy and growing. So I think that's where they got. You're more than ever with this new generation. I think you were in that razor blade mentality of take the loss on the razor so you can sell the blades for a profit. I don't see any other way around what they're trying to do here. Because I still think it's a little too early.
I just think the loss that you'd have to take to sell a console that powerful at 500 or less,
I don't think that's as much of a loss as you think it is, if it even is a loss. The 11 teraflops is not crazy. It's powerful, but it's not like unreasonable.
I mean, that's 4K, 120 frames a second.
Yeah,
powerful. My PC won't do that right now. I have it sitting in my house.
Well, it's depending what you're trying to run. I still think you're even if they hit the 4K, you're still going to see games running at 30.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that too, because even if they could get them to run at 60, they'll pile stuff onto them until they'll only run well at 30.
Well, because the mass audience doesn't buy things for frame rate.
Right, they buy it for how it looks. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I pretty much believe this. No problem. Like even at the very least, I believe it. The Xbox. Maybe Sony, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe they're deciding still at Sony. Sony, I would see taking a hard loss less than Microsoft, because Microsoft A has nothing to lose, and B knows that's not really where their bread is buttered.
I think you're absolutely right. I think Sony would be the one that'd be like, we're the leader. We don't need to take a loss on our hardware, and it's done it before.
Yeah.
I mean, PlayStation 3, $599 US.
Yeah.
I mean, we've already had a $600 console. I don't know, man. I just can't see, even at the volume that they buy the parts, I just cannot see a piece of hardware that powerful being less than 500. I just can't. Well,
I think 500 is your ceiling, and maybe we're talking about the ones that don't have a disk drive in them, or that's not going to save you all that much money.
No.
I think you're
Pat
probably
said it's like best case scenario $50.
Yeah, I think you're looking at, and even then you're probably making up that cost by putting in a larger hard drive.
Right.
For the assumption that you're going
to
buy more
need
digital.
Yeah.
So I would say even if you have multiple SKUs, like disk drive and no disk drive, I think you're still looking at the same price point for both of them. It just matters what that price point's going to be, and my guess is probably 500. And if Microsoft,
how do you think that'll go over with the mass market?
I don't know. Maybe, I mean.
But you brought up a good point earlier too about how things have kind of changed, and it's maybe not necessarily about, hey, here's the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox 2.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to push the rush to get the new thing as hard on this one. I mean, it's going to be you're going to kind of accept that early adopter curve, moving into the sort of looking for a bargain curve, moving into the, oh my God, I have to play the new Halo curve,
Are you going to need it? I mean, are these games going to scale down so you can still play the PlayStation 5 launch game on your PS4?
I think that's not impossible.
Yeah.
I think that's not crazy.
It could be a case where you're right. It's just a soft launch, and they're like, well, they're out there if you guys want them. I mean, the Xbox One X was kind of like that.
Yeah, because it's the phone model. It's I can still play everything that's on the new iPhone on my existing iPhone, but there's that temptation of the newer, the shinier, the better, the faster, the powerful,
Yeah.
and whatever cool new feature. That's going to be another thing, I think, is like some of these consoles are going to do some weird little stupid console tricks that like we can't even think of right now, you know?
Well, the screen
like
on
things
the
you didn't even
controller-
know you wanted. Yeah, the
Yeah.
screens on the controller is a cool thing. God knows what kind of streaming integration they're going to do. You know, you were talking like last week or the week before about like the you know that the Stadia thing doing that interactive YouTube
Yeah.
thing. Like who knows what the hell
Right.
Mixer is going to have on the new
Yeah,
Xbox
it's
or like
true.
what Sony's going to bring in for that. You know, there's a lot of weird little perks and tweak. I was going to say twerks, but that's a very different word.
That's a very
perks
different word.
and tweaks you could do that make these systems an attractive thing in a way outside of just what gaming is, but just what games you get, but also in terms of how you can play the games. You might not be able to play them in the same way on the competing platform. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I think it's going to be interesting to see, and I think it's going to be more interesting than this generation's announcement, because this generation you had Microsoft really pushing to make the Xbox not a video game console, but like the set-top box of legend, which
Right.
did not work
Yeah.
at all because it just wasn't there. And Sony kind of going all in on like, we're just going to play video games, go away, you know. And
The better way
and
to
the
handle that-
Sony's version went better there. But if you can come up with, you know, the industry has changed so much in terms of how people consume gaming media, that I think if you can come up with some integration into how the social media stuff works that isn't something that feels like a suit trying to convince you of something you never wanted and don't want, but something that kind of is an organic evolution of how you interact with games in terms of a streaming solution or in terms of like prominent people that, you know, kind of define the zeitgeist or the influencer crowd, like you could have something in there that really pushes people towards that platform in a way that just exclusive games doesn't do.
Now, if the consoles came out in 2021, I could see that hardware coming in under 500. But next year or this year, I don't see any way.
I think you can Microsoft can bring it into under 500 because they just take the loss.
Yeah.
They just take it. They just eat it because they want that market share back.
Yeah.
You get something that powerful for that price and like with whatever
you
bells
win.
and whistles.
You just win.
I mean, make
But
it
he's
look
saying
like
both.
that.
He's saying both PS4 and Xbox
Yeah,
too.
I mean,
so.
could be. Like I would not surprise me. I mean, with the pricing, like would they go above 500? I would think that would be no.
You would think Sony had
but-
learned that lesson the hard way already, but
Yeah, but like who knows? I mean, if you're going more, if you're delving into the cell phone paradigm, those things are great. Those things are triple that in some
yeah,
places.
yeah.
So like
But you know, I use my cell phone all day, every day.
exactly, yeah.
So it's the value is there for me. Like I didn't have a problem paying cash for my cell phone.
Yeah.
Even though I use my consoles a ton, I would have a problem spending $800, $700 for a console.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't buy both of them at the same
you
time.
That
Yeah.
would be the other thing too. If they are that expensive, you're really making people choose.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not going to be a
And
lot
look,
of multi-console.
like, if you're really
households.
making me choose, I'm gonna pick Sony.
I am going to pick Sony.
Their first party lineup, it's just
It's
nothing
just
like
better.
it on
Yeah.
the Xbox.
I would have to buy Sony's console.
I mean, if you were making me choose between two $600, $800 like Nintendo Sony consoles, that's a harder choice.
that is for the first party stuff.
But
yeah.
Microsoft, and maybe Microsoft can turn it around next gen, but this gen Microsoft has shown me no reason to be in for exclusives. I'm only, like the Xbox One X, I like it because it runs everything better.
all the third party stuff. Yeah.
Not, and you know, that's a different thing. And would I pay another $800? If it's that or like having to shell out $800 at some point for an unknown time whenever I need to because I want to play God of War 2, like I'd rather have the PlayStation in play.
How do you think people would react if the new consoles are $500 or $600?
I really don't know. Like, I mean, I think the PlayStation 3 was a lesson in that. And beyond that, you're kind of getting into 3DO territory.
Yeah. Which isn't something you want to be compared
no,
to.
you don't want to be compared to 3DO in any scenario.
In any sense,
really.
yeah.
I don't know. Like, I mean, I would assume if they did something like that, that the companies would have access to research and marketing metrics that I don't, and would know why they were making that decision. I feel like going over $500 is sort of kiss of death territory.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So it'll be interesting. I mean, look, again, Schreier's like never wrong. So
yeah, I feel like he wouldn't be saying that if he hadn't gotten some kind of like real
legit yeah. Like you don't just like overhear something and run that.
No.
You better have really good sources for it.
So I don't know. Like me,
it seems crazy to me, but
I don't think it's as expensive to do that as you might think it is. I think it's not. It's not a.
It ends Stadia. If that's true, it ends Stadia. It's over.
That might be why
There is no unique selling proposition for Stadia at that point. Like,
well, it doesn't cost $500.
right, but If you watch the Stadia episode that we just published of Pactor Factor, like he says, you're going to be sitting there if you're using Stadia, and he thinks there's no way it's going to be like $10 a month or whatever. So he's like, so let's say it's...
So he agrees with me on that.
So let's say it's 25 or 50. He's like, how many months are you going to sit there and add up that $50 a month before you're like, why didn't I just buy a console?
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I said about what I thought the price was going to be. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, nobody knows. He doesn't know either. He has no clue, even with all his
But I
sources.
definitely would come down more on his estimate on I think the monthly fee for that's going to be more than people think it is.
Yeah. But he was just saying...
I don't blame them for thinking.
But his point was, you can't set it at $25 or $50 a month because it makes the math too easy for people to be like, okay, well, in 6 months, I could just own the console.
Right.
He's
you say that, but like that doesn't necessarily stop them.
He's like, you have to set the price where it's a no-brainer. He's like, you can't make people think.
Right. It's like Netflix. It's like once you cross the $10 a month thing, I'm like, well, wait a minute. Do I really need that? It's like...
No, you're right. It's like and it's gone up $1 like every month or every 6 months for like the last 2 years. It's like $14 now. And now it is getting to the point where I'm starting to be like, okay, I think about it now.
Yeah,
whereas when it was $9.99, it was just fine.
I have a subscription...
Which is silly. It's only $4.
Like I have a subscription to a particular fighting game channel, like they're basically a production company, and like I've been supporting them for like 9 years, and it's like $2 a month. And every time I haven't watched anything they've done for years, and every time it pops up, I'm like, oh, I should cancel that.
It's $2.
And then I just forget because it's $2. It's $2. That's what you need it to be. You need it to be like this sort of like extra expense that isn't quite enough for me to think about it.
Yeah. $10 is the break point, though.
Pretty much, yeah.
$10 up until $10, it's just like whatever money.
And you also have to remember that, like, especially in the gaming and like kind of geek space, there's a lot of subscription things that are $10 a month vying for your
they all add up.
$10 a month. Like,
they
and at a certain
up.
point, you're spending, with like Patreon stuff, like whatever.
That's the other thing he brought up is that like. He's like,
eventually you're spending $100 on all this stuff, and you're like, wait a minute, this isn't any cheaper than what I was already doing.
Yeah, he's like, everyone's cutting the cord. He's like, that's great until you start to realize that now you're subscribing to 6 different services that are all $10 to $15 a month. Now
you're
suddenly
right back where you
you're right back where you started, except now you have logins to all these other different things. So it's... You're right, though. Like, now that Netflix is, like, over $10, like, I see the charge, and I'm like, did I watch it this month? Seriously. Like, before I even think about it.
Right. No.
Now I'm like, did I watch anything this month? And there are months that go by that I don't watch Netflix at all.
Well, because why do you have Netflix now? For the Netflix original stuff.
Original stuff, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only thing I watch it for.
Because all the TV shows and, like, movies that I care about are on Hulu now.
Yeah. Or I've seen them already.
Or they're already there. I bought them on disc.
If I want to see a movie, either I see it in the theater or I rent it, like, when it first comes out. So...
Or it happens to be on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, so
that happens a lot.
Yeah, I put a poll up on Twitter a few weeks ago that was like basically comparing like Netflix and HBO Go, or just HBO. And I was shocked at how many people said they would rather have Netflix than HBO. But then I thought about it. I'm like, well, I'm older. I've seen all the shows that are on Netflix. A lot of these other people haven't. But to me, it's a no-brainer. HBO. Like, I'm just looking at it like I'm buying a console. I'm like, what exclusive content do I like better? Could I live without Game of Thrones and stuff like that? No.
I've lived without Game of Thrones for 4 years. So.
But then I'm like...
I do still have a subscription to HBO because it's part of my package. But
you quit watching it.
Yeah. I came back to it with the Battle of the Bastards.
That was a good point.
I stopped somewhere near the end of Season 4, and I came back for Battle of the Bastards. I went to like a viewing party of that. And it was funny because like I was like, I haven't watched it in like 2 years. And like people are like, oh my God, but you don't know what happens. I'm like, I'm gonna be fine.
I'll live.
And sure enough, it starts and like with the exception of like where like 1 or 2 characters were geographically, I'm like, it's pretty much the same fucking show. Nothing has happened of any note between anybody that's happened, and so I was like caught right up, no problem. Which is sort of my problem with television today in general.
The linear making you wait to watch an episode is ridiculous.
Or just like making me wait to see some story development over the course. I mean, it's like Netflix stuff does that all the time, where it's like, Stranger Things Season 2 is one of my big, like, it's like every single character in Stranger Things Season 2 had one piece of character development they were going to have, and they saved it all for the final 2 episodes, so the other 6 episodes was just tap dancing.
All set up.
It was just waiting and waiting and waiting for something to evolve.
Like, I expected Netflix to win that poll, but I didn't expect it to win in a landslide.
Oh, I did, because HBO's got nothing else. I mean, it's HBO has Game of Thrones, and for me, it has John Oliver. But John Oliver puts the bulk of his show up on YouTube like 2 hours after it airs.
He gives it away.
When that, by the way, is the second most expensive show on HBO after Game of Thrones
to produce.
Yeah, that show costs like $13 million a year.
Why?
I don't know.
Oh my God, it's a great show, but they shouldn't. Cost that much.
The Last Week Tonight is a very expensive show.
How many writers does he have? Like 1 billion?
A fair number, and they turn stuff around pretty fast. They do a lot of international travel stuff. I mean, look, I know this because I was doing a thing that was trying to make kind of a replicant of that show, and like once you dig into how much it actually costs, it's like, oh my God, they spend every episode of that show costs like $1 million plus.
That's hard to believe.
It's amazing, just because of the logistics and the speed required.
Yep. So let's put a number on how likely you think this rumor is that these two consoles are going to be more powerful.
Oh, I'm going to say that's like a 70-80% likelihood. I mean, it helps that it's coming from Schreier.
It does. Yeah.
But so I'd say the source combined with what I think that they're going to do and what they need to do, especially, I would maybe put the likelihood higher for Microsoft.
How about this? What if it had come from anyone but Jason Schreier?
I might drop that about 10%.
Yeah. I agree with that too, because to me, it just seems very unlikely. But the fact that it's coming from Schreier makes me believe it.
Yeah, helps. That's for sure.
For sure.
I want to believe.
I do want to believe.
Let's go Fox Mulder with it.
And that helps a lot of times. Wanting to believe, it helps a lot. So
I would like the next major console purchase I make to be a powerful beast.
Me too. That I wouldn't have to worry about upgrading for the next 10 years, honestly.
Even though it's going to be like 3 years.
Right.
It's going to be 3 years till the Xbox 2X.
Yeah. Whatever the hell it is.
I got to admit, one of my biggest questions about next gen is what are they going to call the Xbox?
Yeah.
I really don't know.
Can you call it Xbox 2?
Call it Xbox again.
Again, yeah.
Xbox again.
They had it right at the beginning. They should just call it Xbox. It's like they're rebooting video game franchises now.
Yeah, just call it the Xbox.
Yeah, it's like
their the new Suicide Squad is going to be titled The Suicide Squad.
It's like if you
a full reboot.
Yeah. It's like if you can do Doom 1, 2, 3, and then call the fourth one just Doom.
It's like, what are you worried that someone's going to go buy an original Xbox by accident? Like, that's not a thing.
All right, let's move on.
And it also makes sense to just brand that as it's an Xbox. What is this? It's an iPhone.
Right.
I mean, there's a number after it, but does anyone say, what is it? No, it's an iPhone.
Only after they make the drastic changes, like after the X. And that was like a drastic change, but other than that, they're just iPhones. All right, so we talked about the upcoming PlayStation and Xbox hardware. Now we're going to talk about Nintendo's upcoming hardware, which also was kind of leaked this week by the Wall Street Journal. Wall Street Journal went on record saying that there are 2 new Switch models coming. The first one is, the way they described it was to the Switch the same way the 2DS was to the 3DS. So it's going to be a kitified version of the Nintendo Switch.
Or some would say streamlined.
Streamlined, kitified. They're trying to make it rugged so that it won't break, essentially. Yeah. And they're saying that it will not have detachable Joy-Cons. It will not have any rumble, and it will not have a dock, and you cannot play it on a TV.
And they basically said, the wording of it made it, called it like a successor to the 3DS.
Yeah.
Which makes even more sense, is it's just a dedicated handheld that is willing to be dropped, basically.
Yeah. They're trying to get everybody to migrate from the 3DS over to the Switch with this cheaper model.
Well, look, if there's anything that's going to make that happen, it's the model they're describing in conjunction with Pokemon Sword and Shield.
Yeah.
Right there, you've got it.
Well, they're also saying it's going to come out way before then, though.
Yeah, it'd be like a summer thing.
Yeah, like this summer. After E3.
I would guess these 2 things are going to be Nintendo's big direct, the big centerpiece of the direct.
You would think. The timing seems to be working out great. How do you feel about that, though? It's not the Switch anymore, then. Do you think they still call it Switch?
Probably.
Or do you think they come up with a new name for it?
Maybe they call it the Swatch.
That's already taken.
Swatch is generic. You're not going to confuse that for a watch.
They just can't call it that because of copyright or whatever.
I think they probably could.
You can get away with that?
Yeah. Swatch is a type of watch, but no one's going to confuse a handheld game system for a watch, for a wristwatch.
I don't think they could get away with it.
A Swatch is a thing. A Swatch means something beyond just Swatch watch. Also, I think that the actual copyright is Swatch Watch.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, they might be able to do. I mean, it's probably not. They're not going to call it Swatch. That's just me being stupid. They could call it Swish.
But do you think that they'll call it something else though?
I don't know. I mean,
other than like Switch Mini or whatever.
I think it'll be still Switch branding. It doesn't make sense to come off. I mean, I know it doesn't make sense anymore because it doesn't switch anything. But I mean, I think you've hit the point in the same way that like Wii was weird early on, but then the Wii was just
a word.
It was just the Nintendo system.
Yeah.
It was so the Switch does. You don't think when you say Switch, you don't necessarily think, oh, I can switch between this and this. You think the Switch is the Nintendo console.
Right.
Like, that's it.
Yeah.
So I think, and it's better to keep the branding consistent. Obviously, there's not anything as convenient as calling the 2DS because from the 3DS because it doesn't do 3D anymore. Like that was handy.
It actually made sense.
Yeah, but I think this is fine. You can maybe switch. I mean, Switch Portable's weird, but like Switch. I don't know what you call. I don't know. You could call a Switch something or the
Switch Go or something like that.
Switch Resilient. I don't know. Like.
I mean, it already is a Switch Go. It's a handheld already. It's like, I mean, really, it's just they're just trying to make it as cheap as possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's cheap and all. I mean, this is kind of probably sort of moving towards that stated goal from last year, where they said that they want everyone in the family to have their own.
Right. Yeah.
Well, here's a good step towards that. Is, because I mean, look, the Switch is a fine piece of hardware, but would I give it to my 6-year-old nephew?
No way.
Like
it would be broken within like 3 hours. Yeah. 3 hours is all I would give it before a kid would destroy.
Like my 10-year-old niece treats hers very well, but like there's still a kid younger than that. Like you don't want to have to supervise them with this.
She's old enough now to understand that if something breaks, she's not guaranteed to get a replacement.
Right. Whereas like I would give him a 3 if he wanted to play. I'd give him a 3DS.
Yeah.
Like he's not gonna. I mean, he might snap it in half.
He would. He'd bend it the other way and break it.
He is a little exploratory in that sense.
Most kids are.
But like, I feel like he would not destroy it in normal use cases.
Yeah.
Whereas the Switch is a fairly delicate instrument in comparison to previous Nintendo handhelds that can survive. When I was in New York, I was at the Nintendo store and I saw that Game Boy that like got napalmed or whatever in a Humvee in like the Gulf War, and it's still sitting there playing Tetris.
It still works. Yeah.
Or the thing where my favorite Game Boy story is this family that lost this kid. He had Pokemon. It was a Game Boy Advance, and he lost it. Was it an Advance? It was a Game Boy Color, and it was an original Pokemon. And he dropped it when they were leaving his grandmother's house in the snow. And they couldn't find it. They dug for it and couldn't find it anywhere. And they came back and they finally, when they visited in the spring, they found it because the snow had melted and it was sitting in the front yard. And not only did it still work, but the Pokemon save was intact.
That's great. Yeah. It makes too much sense to make a cheaper version of Switch that people can buy much more easily. You can give it to a kid, and it's durable. You don't worry about them breaking it.
Or it's just easy to take yourself. I mean, look, I don't bring the Switch places because, like, to pack it up in its case to make sure it's protected takes up too much damn space in my bag most of the time.
Yeah, it does take up a lot more space.
So something I could just, like I love the clamshell design of the 3DS. I just throw it in a bag, you're done.
Yeah.
It's great. So something that's more along those lines, but can still do Switch
think clamshell?
Stuff. I don't know about clamshell, but like some way to protect the damn screen would be nice.
Yeah. You would think for a kid's model they would do something, but if you think about it, the 2DS actually...
Even if it's something that's sort of just like a cover that sort of folds over the top, and then when you're playing, you fold it up and it's like a stand or something. Like something like that would be great.
The 2DS, it actually was less protective.
Yeah. Well, but this is the 2DS now. Like
right. But the
original model,
one,
the original model was kind of
weird,
kind of a disaster. It felt like one of those old like Tomitronic.
It was like a
things.
Tablet,
It
was weird. It took away the protection of the screen.
Yeah,
it took away the clamshell and made it this big chunk of plastic.
Yeah, I didn't like that at all.
Yeah, I didn't either. But you're right. Maybe Nintendo learned and.
Yeah, well, the subsequent 2DS is that that's exactly what it should have been in the first place. But, I mean, I probably wouldn't buy one. Because I'm more interested in the other model that the Wall Street Journal talks about.
Nice segue.
But this is exactly, it doesn't seem like a bad choice to me. Like, I think there's definitely a market for it.
Yep. And then as you alluded to, the other model that the Wall Street Journal mentioned is a souped-up Switch.
Thank God.
Less concrete information on this model, though.
Not too much about, is it just a console? Is it portable still? Like, there's no real info on that. But
they also compared it to the 3DS upgrade.
Yeah.
Whereas they put out that other model of 3DS that had what we were seeing there with the analog nub on it and a better screen and things like that and a better processor. Not by much, but a better processor. It almost sounds like it's going to be Nintendo's Xbox One X.
Yeah.
But nowhere near as powerful,
or maybe
obviously.
more PS4 Pro, which is
yeah,
less
I mean, that's
elite.
a better analogy.
But yeah, if that thing makes previous games play better as well, like, you got my money already.
I don't know why it wouldn't. I mean,
yeah,
Nintendo
would
be stupid to not make it backwards
But
compatible.
I make no secret of the fact that I think the Switch is drastically underpowered.
Well, yeah,
so
I mean, it's a mobile console, really.
Yeah,
I mean,
so if they put out something that, is more... I mean, I don't expect it to be like PS4 Pro.
I don't even expect it to be
PS4.
as powerful.
Yeah.
I think the Wall Street Journal said, like, basically the power of the original Xbox One and PS4. That's what it was alluding to anyway.
Frankly, I'll take it.
I would absolutely take
Yeah.
that. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. That's like double the power of Switch right now. So that's no small leap for Switch to say it may be as powerful as PS4. That's a big deal.
So that would be an insta-buy for me.
Oh, I would absolutely, immediately, I would buy it. I would put my old Switch up on eBay, and I would go buy the new one right away, without a doubt.
I just leave the old Switch on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Just be like, whoever finds it,
for a good
wherever
home.
it lands, there shall it be buried.
I think there's some people watching right now who might take it off your hands before you have to leave it on the sidewalk. So, are you excited about this stuff?
I would be excited about like a Switch Pro. Yeah.
Do you think it'll move the needle for Nintendo at all?
I think it couldn't hurt. I think the handheld one, the handheld focused one, would probably move the needle more.
It'll sell a lot more software.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just makes it. I think the handheld one gets you closer to their goal of like a Switch in every hand.
Yeah.
In the family situation.
Yep.
But to me, the Switch Pro thing would basically be like a bone thrown to like people like me who are here for the performance and the power, which I appreciate because I don't think that people like me are enough to really move that needle too much for Nintendo because Nintendo's audience is different.
Yeah.
But the fact if they would be willing to cater to me in that regard, I will spend the money to buy the thing they offer.
I wonder if that more souped up model is still a handheld.
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, if it's not, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, no, you wouldn't care at all.
No, I would. I have never played the Switch handheld.
But I do wonder if maybe that souped up model is just a console.
It could be, yeah.
And it
I would
plays
not be
Switch
against
games.
that.
I mean, it's kind of like, so you have...
Oh, God, what if it came with a better controller? Wouldn't that be great?
Well, think about it, though, because you have the Switch in the middle. That's both a console and a handheld, medium power. Mm-hmm. Then you have the handheld-only version. That's a little cheaper. Then you have the other models on the other end that is docked only.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of makes sense if you look at the line.
Yeah, at that point, the Switch almost makes... Once you put two unmoving things on either side of the Switch name actually makes more sense.
It does. It absolutely does. So it's a possibility.
Yeah,
That's just
I could see
me
that.
dreaming. But it'll be interesting to see. I think no matter what, it's good for Nintendo. The more consoles you get in people's hands, because there are people like you that haven't bought a Switch. You bought one. There are people like you who haven't bought one because of its power, who now may jump in, and then they start buying software. You get it in the hands of kids. They start buying. It's all about selling more games.
If you want me to replay Zelda, I might replay it.
I might.
If it looks better, if it runs smoother.
Yeah.
Because I did try to play it when the DLC came out, and I completely forgot everything I was doing. And
It's one of those games.
I'm kind of like, I have to start over, and oh my God, I don't want to play that all again.
You're right. You forget almost everything about that game when you go back to it. I felt like I did play the DLC, and for the first like 30 minutes, I was like a fish out of water. I couldn't remember how to do anything. Because that game, its controls are kind of like proprietary. They don't really kind of transfer over to other games.
Nintendo does do their own thing usually when it comes to stuff like that.
Yeah, so no matter what, I think those new models are a good thing for Nintendo, and I think you agree as well.
Yeah, I think so. I'll be interested to see the pricing, because I would guess that the Pro whatever version would be more expensive.
Yeah, you would think, unless it's not handheld.
Right. I mean, my guess would be that like the handheld version would be cheaper, and maybe the main Switch SKU would drop in price
a little bit.
And the Pro version would take over the old price, full price of the Switch.
That would make too much sense, which means it'll
probably
never
not. It's going to happen. Yeah.
All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about Bethesda briefly. And the reason we're going to talk
Speaking of not making sense.
Exactly. The reason we're going to talk about Bethesda briefly is because there's really nothing to talk about with Bethesda. So it announced this week, Todd Howard announced this week.
I actually sent you this one.
You did.
Through text.
You did.
And you were like, what?
Yeah. So Todd Howard announced this week that both the Elder Scrolls 6 and Starfield will be no-shows at E3 2019. Neither game being shown at the biggest video game convention in the world.
Now, the Elder Scrolls 6 not being there doesn't surprise me at all. I'm a little surprised that nothing on Starfield.
Yeah.
Like, even a little bit of, like, what is it? Kind of. Even if you're not showing gameplay.
They put out teaser trailers for both games at this point.
A year ago.
Yeah.
And, like, but even like sort of what we got about Beyond Good and Evil 2 last year. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Well, not last year, but I mean even 2 years ago. Like the kind of the first sort of like, hey, it's coming sort of thing. Here's an idea of what it is.
It's still coming.
Yeah.
After it had been announced like
right.
5 years earlier.
So like even some kind of thing of like, what is Starfield? We're not going to show you like gameplay live or anything, but we are going to kind of take you through what we think this game is going to be.
Yeah.
Like something like that was kind of what I was expecting. I never expected Elder Scrolls. I think Elder Scrolls 6 is like 2024, 2025. I think Elder Scrolls 6 is so far out, like you're talking about like graduated children by the time. I mean, there's. I think it's going to be like almost 15 years between Elder Scrolls games at this point. It's crazy.
And then on basically the same day.
It's not even getting into Fallout 5.
Yeah, and then on the same day they announced that yes, we're doing our E3 press conference.
Yeah. So apparently,
what's going to be in that?
Apparently, there's going to be a whole lot of Doom Eternal.
Yeah, I mean, what do they have?
Doom Eternal, Wolfenstein Youngblood Blowout, I guess. God, there's probably going to be some long fucking Elder Scrolls online
Youngblood
thing.
comes out like a week later. It's coming out in like June.
I didn't know that. Yeah, I mean, probably some fucking Elder Scrolls thing. God, what if Then there's Blade, which
Blades, yeah.
Like we still didn't get to play because they told me to download it and I did, and I'm like, oh, we'll let you know when you can play it. And,
like, and I want to see this actually. Anyone watching the stream right now?
Did anyone get to play it?
Has anyone been able to play the Elder Scrolls Blades? Anyone in chat? Both of us downloaded it immediately. Neither one of us have been able to play it.
Yeah.
I
bet you it's going to be in that presentation.
Probably, maybe. I got messages from people on Twitter that were saying the same thing. Like they couldn't. Like I thought I was gonna. So it came out. Somebody messaged us on Twitter saying, "Oh, I'm gonna go download it." I'm like, "I'm downloading it too," and the person said, "Oh, I have to go do something I can't play." And I was like, "No such problem for me."
Yeah.
And it was like loading up the screen. I took a screenshot and uploaded it to Twitter of the opening screen, and then I fought like this little thing. And then there's a message that just says, you're not worthy.
Yeah, you're like,
we'll send you a notification when you're able to play. That was, 5 days ago?
Yeah.
4 days ago? Still nothing.
I've checked a few times.
No notification.
I checked last night, still nothing.
I did the same thing yesterday. Because I was like, okay, I want to play this for the show so I can talk about it. And no, still nothing. Has anybody been able to play? Let me take a look at chat real quick. Nope.
Nobody
wait.
Jumping out.
One person did.
Play the tutorial? I don't know if that counts. What we saw counts as the tutorial, where kind of basically you would whack an elf with a stick a few times.
Good Has Gone says, tried it the next morning and it worked. Didn't get a notification, though. Everyone else is like, no. Didn't even know it was out. Some people are saying.
Because I did the thing where I quote-unquote pre-ordered it. You basically tell the App Store that you're interested.
Yeah.
And they'll let you know. And it actually auto-downloaded. Like it popped up.
Really?
It popped up a notification that says Blades is ready to play. And I'm like, oh, really? It was already there.
I mean, this is the only Elder Scrolls we're going to get for like the next 6 years.
I just loaded it up again, and it says
you get
come
the
back
same
later.
message. Did you have to fight the fight again?
No, I'm already logged in.
What do you think about that combat that's in that little thing there?
I don't get it.
Yeah.
I'm like, I hope there's some nuance to that because I don't quite understand why I'm losing. I mean, I don't think you can lose that fight.
Yeah.
But like,
I mean, look, it's mobile gaming. I'm not really used to it. But it is funny what people who play mobile games will put up with just so they don't have to buy a damn console.
Yeah, well, I mean, it feels like a little more involved than your average mobile game. But
yeah.
Like, we'll see how it goes.
Well, it's like you hold your thumb to power up your sword slash. And you release it, and then you slash. And that's pretty much all the combat, the gameplay that we've seen so far. At least that we've played.
I'll wait and see what's in there.
But bottom line is, what the hell's going on at Bethesda? Bethesda is very fortunate that they are a private company.
That's true.
Very fortunate.
Maybe
right now their stock would be in the toilet.
Maybe Prey 2. I mean, Human Head.
So you're just gonna announce that and like
not Prey 2,
and then release
but the
it
new
like
Prey 2.
Yeah.
Different Prey 2. Why'd you call it Prey?
Yeah.
And I would think it's about time for Arcane to have something new on deck.
I guess. But you're gonna like announce that and then release it before Elder Scrolls and Starfield? Like those games have been in development for years.
Elder Scrolls is a bunch of concept art. I promise you. Elder Scrolls 6 doesn't exist. Starfield, I think Starfield spent a lot of time with them trying to decide what it was going to be. I think that's probably further along. But I mean, Starfield, I would expect Starfield like 2021, something like that. Here's the thing, and we talked about this a bit when this broke, because you were like, why the hell would you show these things last year if you weren't going to follow up the following year? And I think I don't have any actual, concrete insight. I'm not Jason Schreier on this one or anything, but I think they knew what Fallout 76 was going to be. Like at that point in June, you had to know where this was going. It also would explain why they didn't demo it at E3. And so what you do is you take, you have these two games that people are actually going to care about in the pipeline, and so you get up there and you announce them and you say, there's stuff coming. These are coming. So preemptively sort of, so when the blowback hits on Fallout 76, and even when that did happen, there were still people saying, oh, well, this sucked, but at least Starfield's coming, at least Elder Scrolls is coming. And coming is a strong word, it seems like at this point. But yeah, I even said at the time, I think you're looking at 2021. I was saying launch new systems at best for Starfield, but now I think you're looking at 2021, 2024, 2025 for Elder Scrolls 6. Elder Scrolls 6 was always a long, long way out.
Fallout 76 is just shoving a baseball bat right up Bethesda's derriere.
It's not a good look.
Oh, it's so bad. I mean, they needed that game. Now you really realize they needed that game to be a hit, man. Not only to sell well out of the gate.
To stall for time.
To stall for time and to sustain revenue while you wait for these other games.
Because nothing else they've been putting out has been making money.
No,
even though they review well, they're good games, but they don't sell the way.
I mean, honestly, Fallout Shelter may be one of Bethesda's most successful games in a long time.
That's true.
If you think about it, it's crazy, but it's true. I mean, the other thing too is that I'm starting to look at E3 now, and I'm like, damn.
Yeah.
What is there?
Do you think they'll have the balls to spend some time talking about the Fallout 76 roadmap?
No.
Well, don't they have to?
They kind of have to. Yeah.
But what an awkward thing.
Releasing that game was awkward.
Is Todd gonna have to go out there and be like, all right, let's talk about it? Is it gonna be like, hey, we know?
I mean, that's Bethesda's MO. I mean, they act like they're a very small company, and they do respond to fans when fans complain. So they may. That may do that on purpose to try to get people to go and check it out. They may pull the whole, we know we royally screwed up, but this is what we've been doing since.
But have you played Blades?
Yeah. No, in fact, you probably haven't.
You haven't, because we won't let you.
Still waiting for that notification? Maybe you should try Fallout 76. Yeah,
look, I appreciate that you need to make the rollout smooth, but even with all the furor this morning, I still got my Avengers tickets faster than I've been able to play Blade.
I don't understand. Is it an online RPG?
You have to log in, yeah.
But dude, it's not like you're sending information. If I download it to my phone, it's just crazy. Bethesda right now is crazy. What's going on there? What products do they have to support them for the next 2 years?
Doom,
man.
I mean, Elder Scrolls Online's doing pretty well, I guess.
Is it?
Yeah, it's doing all right for what it is.
I know one thing.
Maybe Fallout Shelter just makes millions and millions of dollars.
It's possible. But I know one thing: if they were a publicly held company, they would be up shit's creek
I do think that it would have been real financially nice to have Elder Scrolls 6, maybe more like next year.
Yeah, absolutely. That's not happening. So, good luck, Bethesda. E3 starting to look really, really grim. Mm-hmm. Really grim.
No Sony and.
No Sony, no big games from Bethesda.
Well, I mean, we'll see what Bethesda's got. There might be something new from Arcane, might be something new from Human Head. Talking sales-wise, no, but I don't own Bethesda, so I don't give a shit how much they sell. I'm just interested in good games, and they put out good games.
Yeah,
they just put out good games. They put out generally.
Not always.
No, but they put out good games that don't sell the way that a Skyrim or a Fallout sells, and I think they need a Skyrim or a Fallout coming up to keep things, liquid.
Yeah.
But hopefully they can hang on, get Starfield out, and it'll be a nice big new hit for them. it'd be good. I mean, I'd like to see what what
I'd
those
love to
guys
see
make.
it. Absolutely.
Make out of like a Mass Effect idea.
Yeah.
I'm on board for that.
I'm excited for Elder Scrolls too. I mean, I don't care what happened with Fallout 76. So
well, no, Fallout 76 is a different beast. I'm certainly not going to try and judge Starfield or Elder Scrolls 6 by what Fallout 76 was.
Yeah, but thanks you very much for that.
Oh yeah, but it's also a different group. You know, like,
it is.
It's a different team.
A lot of people don't realize that, but that's true. All right, we got to move. We need to be fluid because we got a bunch of topics and we got about 50 minutes left, so we got to get cranking.
We don't get to the last topic until 2024. That's the rule.
All right. Up next, we're going to talk about a new law that was just passed in Europe, though it actually hasn't gone into action yet. People are referring to it as Article 13. That's what we're going to call it. And
sounds like an X-Files thing.
Yeah, there's 2 other articles that are actually more pertinent, but people have decided to use Article 13 as
what sounds more sinister.
The talking point, yes, unlucky 13 or whatever. And essentially what's happened...
Execute Article 13.
Yeah. Essentially what's happened in Europe is they just passed new copyright laws, which puts the onus on websites like YouTube to police their own websites.
Basically, you're liable for the content that other people create and put on your service.
Yep, which honestly...
Which explains why all of a sudden everybody's not too interested in having Nazis on their platform anymore.
Yeah, funny how that works. And so basically, instead of it being our responsibility as Sifted to go on YouTube and find where people are stealing our content and report it to YouTube, it would be YouTube's responsibility to police that right from the get-go and make sure that people aren't uploading our stuff in the first place. And
this is also, I think, why you've got things like Mark Zuckerberg writing that op-ed about how, like, we need government regulation on it because they aren't ready to do this for themselves.
Nobody is.
No.
YouTube, and I've talked about this many times on GameFace, so I'm not going to resurface it again, but YouTube built its business illegally. It built its business on infringing copyright. And the problem with YouTube and other websites that are that big is you can't put the genie back in the bottle. So once YouTube got
Can you imagine a world without YouTube now?
Right. So, but neither can the lawmakers.
Right.
That's what's happened, is that YouTube was allowed to build its business illegally for so long, and it developed itself into a business that no one can do without now, including old people who like to go and watch fishing videos or whatever else. Everybody watches something on YouTube. Everybody. And so everyone can relate at this point, and they have been in this safe harbor all along. And now the problem is it's gone on so long, it's very difficult to all of a sudden ask websites like Facebook and YouTube to be the cops. It just is. And like I hate it. The analogy I've used before is Clorox doesn't have to stand in the aisle at Walmart to make sure people aren't stealing their bleach. So why should I have to go on YouTube and look for people stealing my content? But at a certain point, there's no going back and fixing that. So what they're saying now is if that law does actually go into action, it hasn't yet, it's passed, it hasn't been enacted yet. I think that happens in like a year or something. There's like a big grace period or something for it still. But instead of
next year, the beginning of the year after, I can't remember which.
Yeah, so what they're saying is instead of YouTube building a system to do that, what YouTube is going to do is that you're just going to outlaw any uploads from Europe. Because they're like, you know, for us to be responsible to build this stuff, why? You know, it's a cost-benefit analysis. You're going to look at how much money are you making off of the stuff that people upload from Europe. I mean, it's going to be very simple. And you're going to say, well, how much is it going to cost for us to build this, and how much is it going to cost for us to maintain it? Because building the systems is one thing, but maintaining it and actually working on it is something else entirely. How much staff are you going to need, and how much is that going to cost you a year, and how much is that going to cost you 10 years from now? That's all stuff that they're going to have to figure out. But right now, everyone is assuming that YouTube will just be like, you know what? We can't really do this in the first place, so we're just going to stop uploads from any country that passes these laws. And, you know, a lot of people are going the, oh, it's censorship route, all that, which I don't believe at all.
No, that's not censorship. Although it is, I mean, it's on the company. It's like, yeah, it's like, on one hand, it's like, yeah, you can't put the genie back in the bottle, but at the same time, when you were building this kind of a company, did you really not think this was going to come, this day was going to come? Like,
well, Viacom told him it was going to come.
Yeah.
Viacom sued them and lost every time.
Yeah.
And spent billions of dollars on lawyers' fees that was just wasted.
But like, you know,
because of laws that were written back in like the 1950s.
So like banning all uploads from Europe seems extreme.
It's really extreme, but this is extreme though.
Yeah.
That's why it's such a big topic.
But like, I don't really disagree with the law.
Me either.
Like, it's gonna be. I mean, you're basically you're forcing checkmate at this point.
Yeah, you're basically saying you can't steal anymore. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
Also, you're
Content
saying, also
is being stolen.
Like, if you're gonna have it happen in your place of business, you're responsible for that. It's like, you know, Walmart couldn't get away with having like a KKK meeting in the back of the toy section.
Right.
Like, you know, it's the same thing. Like, you can't just let that run rampant and pretend there's nothing you can do about it, because there was something you could do, and now maybe maybe it's an impossible thing because it's gotten so big. But you got 2 years.
The problem.
You got 2 years to figure something out.
The problem is,
or someone else has 2 years to launch a competing service that does do that properly.
Right.
And
you need deep pockets to do that.
You would, but really someone might see it as worth it.
It absolutely is worth it. I can tell you that right now. It would be worth it if you could take over YouTube's market. Absolutely, it's worth it. I think the problem, though,
it's called opportunity. Kids.
The problem, Matt, is it, and I guarantee right now, everybody watching this show is saying this, is the only people who think that we're right are the people who create stuff. The people who don't create stuff, the people who just consume stuff, they think we're crazy. They don't, because, and in fact, they don't think we're crazy. They know where we're coming from. Because they can say, what if I worked on something and someone just stole it? Anybody can get that. But they're looking at it like, wait a minute, I use YouTube all day, every day. I cut the cord for YouTube. This is where I get all my entertainment from. And, I mean, we got it, like, Pachter made a little brief speech in the episode that went on YouTube last week about, you know, people, it costs money to make content. It costs money to make something. It takes ingenuity. It takes perseverance to make something. And you're just stealing it. And so, and the comments we got on that, you wouldn't believe it. How many people were like, I ain't paying for any content. You're just an opinion like anyone else's opinion, and if you go away, I'll just find someone else's opinion. Like, that's the way most people think. They don't think that there's any value in creating content. They don't care that it costs money to create content. We're on an island, and that's the problem. That's why YouTube has got away with this for so long, because it's like I said, even the politicians are like, but dang, I love that fishing video that I watch every Saturday. It's true. Everybody has something on these platforms that they enjoy. And we're the only people who are fighting the power, so to speak. We're the outliers.
Well, except in this case, the power is
the government.
I mean,
the government is fighting back. In
Article 13 is the power.
It is, yeah.
Should it go into effect in 2021?
But my feeling is that's not going to happen. That people are going to complain, and there's going to be people like, you know, outside of Parliament with pitchforks.
Well, if I were Parliament, or if I were, you know, I don't know who's doing. I guess it's EU. Is it the EU?
Yeah.
So it wouldn't apply in Britain, maybe.
Right.
If they hard Brexit.
If they actually get out.
Philosophy tube saved.
Which who even knows what's going to happen there at this point.
But no, like, so whatever. I don't know what the ruling body is in the EU, because I'm an American and we don't know things outside of our own country, if we even know anything.
Most Americans don't even know how our government works.
No. So yeah. I don't know. Like, my question would be, like, I think it's a good chance that the EU would stand firm and say, hey, if you got a problem, talk to YouTube, talk to Facebook. Like, they're the ones that need to deal with it now. And like, because the idea of actually policing your own business properly doesn't seem crazy to me.
It's not crazy.
I mean, it's just really hard.
But that's what happens when something starts in that way. I mean, it was illegal. It was illegal what YouTube was doing.
This also, by the way, is why we need younger government people.
Yeah, that get
who understand these new technology. You know,
like I said, the laws
and aren't going to sit there and ask Zuckerberg how they make money.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
We run ads.
We run ads, sir. Like,
it's like, you just made Mark Zuckerberg look funny.
Yeah,
like,
and that's hard.
Like, he had a personality for a second there. You know how hard that is to make?
Because you're so ignorant.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, it's like, we are a very small group of people who create stuff.
Yeah, well, I think...
And everyone else are consumers, and they're not going to fight for us, man. They're going to fight for themselves, and that's getting free stuff, free content, all the shows they like for free, whatever.
Well, they know what they just don't care.
Because let's be honest, the whole... YouTube is still crazy illegal. Like, if you go on there at night, like you mentioned earlier, John Oliver's show is on there 2 hours later. That's put up by HBO's official channel.
Yeah.
But if you go look... That episode is up 1,000,000 times on there before HBO even puts it up. So HBO puts it up at like 2 hours later. As soon as that show's done airing, there are bootleg of that with ads running against it all over YouTube. Happens with every HBO show. You go on there, as soon as it's done,
I don't see it too much with
and you know how they do it? They get around it. They'll zoom in really far.
Or they change the pitch of the
they change the pitch of the audio.
I haven't seen that with Last Week Tonight too much, like since they started doing live stream. So
Bill Maher show.
Bill Maher way more. Yeah, there's like tons of channels dedicated to putting Bill Maher's show up immediately.
It's not just HBO. It's everything. It's every show on television. YouTube is still illegal. It's still doing all kinds of illegal stuff on a daily basis. It's still making money off of copyrighted content that it does not own, and millions and millions and millions of dollars off of it. And it's just become so big and so important to so many people that we are just this little small voice.
Is that the bulk of it though? Like I don't know if that's
That's not the bulk of their business. No, of course not.
Like it's like because my YouTube.
No, the bulk of their money is made legitimately.
Yeah, the bulk of my YouTube experience is centered around what would be called YouTubers, like in their original content and analysis and video essays.
And that's the other thing. That's the other angle of this is transformative works. What they are, what they aren't. Generally, if you go by the book of the law, Let's Plays are not transformative. They're not. They need to be commenting on every moment that happens in the game. If they sit there still or take a drink of water or are eating while they're playing or are not paying attention or are not providing commentary at all, if there's any dead air, that's where they go off the reservation. That's not a transformative work anymore. So technically, again,
that becomes more of a problem for Twitch, I would imagine.
It does, yeah. And again, that's a problem. So there's no easy answer because
God forbid you run a Nintendo trailer.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look at Uber. Uber was such a disruptive idea that it just broke all these laws, made up its own laws, ignored the law, and it got so big that they're like, okay, well,
we have to adjust to it.
We have to adjust to it. That's exactly right, and that's the way society is going. Look at the scooters, the Lime scooters. Like, they didn't wait for any laws to be passed. They just bought a shit ton of scooters and just put them on the street. And then
put them on my street.
They put them on every street. And after
you're stepping over these things like dead birds.
Yep. And then what happens is people get on them and they realize these are damn fun. Like I had a blast on that scooter riding up and down the beach. Like it's awesome. It's fun. And once there's so many people that are saying, I like this, it's so hard to dial it back and bring it back. And I just think that it's not just YouTube or Facebook or Twitch. It's anything that's disruptive because now people just put it out there. They don't worry about the laws or the regulations. They're like, there's a phrase that a lot of entrepreneurs use. It's slipping my mind right now. It's like, make it till you break it or something like that. But there's some saying that they all say that's basically like, just do it.
Make it till they break it.
Or no, it's like do it now, pay later, or something like that.
It's the ask forgiveness rather than permission.
Right.
Thing.
It's easy to ask for forgiveness and ask for permission.
Or like a thing went up today where like there was another company. This has happened before, but another tech company, like disruptor company, is like, here we've designed standing airline seats. So like seats that you basically, they're like a bicycle seat against a vertical like chair, and you kind of lean against it, and that's your thing. That's your thing, and they look like the most uncomfortable torture devices you could possibly imagine. And like they're just out there. It's like, oh, look at this, we can do this. We can cram 3 times as many people in a flight. And someone's like, yeah, but like, guess what? You can't assume a crash position in that. You can't evacuate those people because they're straddling something and you can't get them out of the seat in time. Like, you can never get through FAA regulation like that. So, like, everyone who's afraid that that's what your long-distance flight's going to turn into, don't worry because you can't get around the regulations on that. Whereas you don't have that safety valve in something like YouTube because nothing like it existed before.
Yep.
Like, that's the key is when you're disrupting something that has no... Or, the Uber thing's a good example because it's sort of a gray area there because it's like, yes, they were violating all these like regulations and laws, but they're regulations and laws that no one could ever have foreseen could have been violated on that scale because it took the advent of cell phones and Wi-Fi and hotspots and all that kind of commerce around it to create the opportunity to even make that happen because a taxi cab service would never have done any of that.
Right, and then once the people who
and then when people are like, well, wait, you can't like maybe go back to taking cabs again because that's not convenient. And the lawmakers are like, well, I want to get reelected, so I guess we better just change the laws.
Well, yeah, because the lawmaker rides in an Uber.
And he
takes an Uber to the airport.
And that's how we ruined LAX.
Right. He's like, holy crap, I just got to the airport for a third of what I usually pay. There is no way I'm getting rid of this. Like, it's the same thing with YouTube or anything else. Once the mass amount of people get behind it, it's very hard to turn the tide. And I don't think this Article 13 will ever go into law in Europe. I think there's so much time between now that it was passed and until it's enacted that there's just so much crap is going to happen.
A lot can happen in the next year and 3 quarters for sure.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that turns out.
So I wouldn't get too bent out of shape over it. If you support or are against it regardless, I wouldn't get too bent out of shape either way.
I mean, I remain in favor of making these companies patrol their own content.
Me too.
I mean, I think
yeah, me too.
Not even in just
but
not even in the sense of just piracy.
I guarantee there's not a single person watching this stream right now that will agree with us.
Yeah, whatever.
Because they don't create content. They don't put their heart and soul in it and all that.
As Morpheus said, was it in the Matrix? Is like, not everyone shares your beliefs. My beliefs do not require them to.
Yeah, I like that. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about Kaz Hirai briefly. Kaz Hirai retired this week from Sony Corporation.
All the greats are falling.
It is true. Like, it was a big turning point for me, like, as far as how I looked at myself and my age.
Yeah, first Reggie and now Kaz Hirai. Has anyone checked on Jay Allard?
Yeah, I think, no one's checked on Jay Allard in a long time, actually.
Ouch.
But how do you feel about it? I mean, I literally felt really old, man, because when the first time I saw Kaz Hirai at, like, something in person, he was a young guy.
Yeah.
And now he's retiring.
Yeah.
It made me feel very mortal.
We grew up with him. Him and Ridge Racer.
What will be his ultimate legacy?
Some really good gifts on NeoGAF.
Some, like, the best NeoGAF gifts ever.
Yeah, the one, God, I can't remember who did them. It was the one. It was like it was from our old E3 like PlayStation press conference, but they'd replaced all the heads of people in Mission Impossible 2 with like the Microsoft guys, and like the thing where he thinks he's killed Tom Cruise, but he pulls the mask off, and it's one of his own dudes, and it's like
That's a good one.
I think he pulled the mask off, and instead of being, it was Kaz Hirai's the mask, he pulls the mask off, and it's Don Matrick.
Yeah, it's
and then it just cuts to like Kaz Hirai pulling the mask off and running, like, and it's just like, and the PlayStation logo comes on, and it's like still here. It was the
NeoGAF used to be great.
Yeah, there was
really was awesome.
The creative culture that I think
SUNY
Legend, I think, is the name of the guy who does those gifts. He does a lot of good gifts. But the kind of the culture that sprang up surrounding Kaz and sort of him as the figurehead of Sony was very entertaining. And he was good. He was a good front man. Outside of that one, I mean, it wasn't his fault that 2006 conference was a disaster. But he tried. Yeah,
I mean, his legacy to me will be the PlayStation 2.
Yeah.
Like, the best-selling platform ever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that to me is his feather in his cap.
Yeah, he and Kutaragi pretty much dominated.
I will always associate Kutaragi with the PlayStation 3.
Me too, but like he was still there for the 2.
He was, yeah. I mean, he designed the PlayStation 2. He designed the original PlayStation.
I mean, yes, in my head when you say Kutaragi, my first thing is like, God, the cell processor was a terrible idea.
Yeah.
But like... yeah, Kaz is, he's maybe not as prominent as, like, outside of the niche core audience as somebody like Reggie would be. He was a little more public facing in places, but he's one of the giants, I think.
No, absolutely one of the giants. And people probably know this, but maybe they don't. And that is his last few years working at Sony. He didn't really work on PlayStation at all. They were still a part of his purview. He technically was over the PlayStation brand, but he had moved on to work, and you can see it here at one of these events that he was speaking at, just to speak more generally about Sony's products, cameras and televisions and everything else that Sony makes. People don't even realize all the stuff that Sony makes. And so it was good to see someone from our industry prove that they could move into some other industry and also be successful and disruptive as he did. So, but yeah, I think most people, though, when they think about Kaz, they're going to think about that lower third right there, Ridge Racer. I mean, that really is what I think he will ultimately be known for forever.
Yeah, that will be the retrospectives will feature clips from that.
Like when you Google Kaz Hirai in 20 years,
$599 US.
it's going to be a meme of Ridge Racer. It's such a shame that all his work is going to simmer down to some stupid meme. But isn't that like the way society is now?
Yeah, but also like,
everything is simmered down to a meme.
Also, he doesn't, he wasn't as kind of involved in a more regular basis as like kind of the Nintendo guys are with the directs and stuff. Like he's just sort of showed up for these, once a year things or twice a year things, and if one of those once a year things goes wrong,
it's all on him.
That's what you're gonna remember,
Yeah.
At least he wasn't the guy doing the giant enemy crab demo.
But I think he tossed to him, didn't he?
Oh yeah, he introduced all that stuff. He did Ridge Racer. I think he was involved in the Eye of Judgment thing.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at some of the other great things that's coming on PlayStation. It was just like a long shot of a rhino chewing grass from Africa. That game Africa, which is worth like $200 now.
Are you kidding me?
It's very rare. It's a valuable game now.
Wow, I never would have guessed that. But you can see later in his career, like they just showed PlayStation VR for literally like 2 seconds. Yeah,
well, this is a general kind of Sony thing.
Yeah. But notice that
you forget about it because Sony Computer Entertainment was the only profitable wing of Sony for a very long time.
Yeah, which makes sense for why they would promote him up and to do other things.
Oh yeah, he ran the good part basically,
and he did a good job with Sony too. He started turning like the company at large around.
Yeah, which was something that a lot of people, like analysts, did not think was necessarily possible. Even
it's like steering the Titanic.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
like it's that big.
And none of the divisions like each other, and they all think they're in competition.
They never really spoke with each other.
Yeah, there's no synergy happening. They all resent the PlayStation brand because it was like this. It was kind of it was like the successful older sibling, where like corporate home was like, why can't you be more like your brother PlayStation?
Yeah.
Who actually brings home a salary once in a while?
So who's left from the old guard at this point, Matt?
At Sony.
Anywhere in the industry.
Well, I mean, Mark Cerny is still in there.
Yeah.
Doing his researchy thing and making knack games.
Making more teraflops than the Google Stadia.
Phil Harrison is over at Stadia.
He just reappeared after being gone for
a while.
A long while. There aren't many left.
Where's Jack Tretton now?
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows. Not even him?
I don't think even he knows. They're all gone. Like, all the old guard are gone.
We're getting to the point where Jeff Keighley is one of the old statesmen.
No, you're right. I mean, and so are we. I hate to say it, but...
Yeah, we're not quite as high profile as
Jeff
Keighley.
That's not what I meant. I didn't mean that we were, like, as popular or as known as Keighley, but we're part of the old guard, like...
Well, yeah.
Absolutely. It's interesting. Aging sucks. I don't like anything about it. Do you?
Yeah, I'm fine. Everything's okay.
Everything's fine. Yeah. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about Valve.
I felt pretty much the same since I was 27.
Really?
Call me when the arthritis kicks in, then I'll complain more.
No, it's really just been the last couple of years for me, where I was like, man, I'm getting old. Before that, I didn't...
Well, I recognize that in terms of like a chronological thing. I mean, 2 days ago, it was the 20th anniversary of The Matrix.
Yeah, that's pretty
Which
scary.
in my head is still kind of a new movie.
Which also means like the 20th anniversary of the PlayStation 2.
Right, and the 20th anniversary in a couple months, 20th anniversary of next month, 20th anniversary of The Phantom Menace.
It's crazy.
Which, by the way, it had only been 16 years since Return of the Jedi when that came out.
Yeah.
That was forever. Now it's longer.
Nuts. All right, we got to move on. We've got limited time left and a couple more topics. So we're going to talk next about Valve and VR. We haven't talked about VR in this show in a long, long time, and for good reason, because it's basically become, I don't want to say irrelevant, but increasingly less relevant over the last year and a half. I think we did actually talk about PlayStation VR a little bit last week because Sony's State of Play was all PlayStation VR. But Valve had kind of ponied up with HTC. And so HTC Vive was the official VR HMD of Steam. And then rumors started circulating. And then about a year ago, Gaben made some comment about how he was jealous of Nintendo for being able to create hardware and software. And then the rumor mill really started swirling.
Well, you don't do either, so
yeah.
I can see why you'd be jealous of that.
It appears that that's all about to change, though. So after some leaks, some people found some pages on Steam. Eventually, Doug Lombardi from Steam, who we both have known for decades and decades, confirmed that, yes, in fact, Valve is working on its own HMD called Index. And so the first question I have is why?
Why not?
I mean, other than Gabe saying, I'm jealous of Nintendo because they make hardware.
I mean,
why?
Isn't that enough?
I guess when you
one
have
of the richest men on the planet
when you have that
who
kind
owns
of money,
the company.
that is enough.
Yeah, it's like, right. Yeah. Like,
touche.
Done.
I stand corrected.
And who knows what their relationship or their experience with HTC was, and maybe they still believe in the VR thing, but they don't want to deal with another company for it.
Yeah.
You know?
I also would be surprised.
Clearly
HTC's been trying to sell its VR division as well,
yeah.
so maybe this is...
clearly there's some similarities, because there's clearly Lighthouse sensors on this thing, so I think it's using the same tracking method. I'm excited to see kind of the VR stuff progress more and more, so I'm glad they're not like walking away from it. I am a little nervous that my old joke about Half-Life 3 being a VR exclusive game might not be a joke anymore. It might not be too funny much longer.
We're going to be playing Half-Life 3 by the end of the year.
And Gabe even said, or someone, was it Gabe? Somebody even said, it's like, for anyone's upset about Half-Life, like, hang on, don't die yet.
Yeah, yeah.
Somebody says, like, oh, is Half-Life 3 going to come out before I'm dead? And he's like, don't die yet. And like, I don't know, like he could just be screwing people, but it's like, that would people would gripe, but they'd probably buy it to play Half-Life 3.
I think.
How mean would that be?
That would be the meanest.
Yeah.
The meanest. You have to spend $500 to play Half-Life 3. Yeah. That's a position that a lot of people would struggle with. Like some people say, "Oh, that's crazy." No one would ever. Oh yeah, I would think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I would think about just buying Valve's VR headset anyway, because just based upon Valve's reputation, I would assume it's going to be the best VR headset.
Yeah, I mean, the Vive was.
It was,
sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been in a box for a year and a half, but
yeah.
Like, there's nothing to play on it. But like, I mean, there is, but
it's a lot like all the other stuff there was to play on it.
Yeah, look, there's a point at which I'm just not going to drill holes in a wall to play.
Yeah. A VR game.
Another VR game.
Yeah.
But this looks like it does still use the lighthouses, so I have to figure out a solution to that. But anyway, I mean, I think about it. Depends. The more these things move towards a more self-contained, like, just pick it up and put it on and you're going. Like, that's a more interesting, the wirelessness, self-contained elements.
It doesn't look like this is going to be
It doesn't look like it's on the level of, like, that new Oculus thing.
Yeah.
But when, maybe they're going for resolution, maybe they're going for fidelity.
Quality, yeah. So people like me don't get sick.
Yeah.
That would be great. I'm down with that. No one knows better than Valve how much of a disaster Vive was. It knows that it never sold. It knows that it sold maybe 1 million in the whole time it's been available. It knows because it's the one who sells all the software for it. It knows how much software it has or has not sold for it. It knows its own products that it made for Vive. What was it called? VR Labs or whatever? The Lab.
It was free, though.
It was free, yeah. So
it's probably one of the best things on the headset.
Yeah, I know. That's the crazy part about it. And it was free, and it was like right there at launch. So, it's hard to question Valve because Valve has more data than anyone. It knows better than anyone whether this is worth pursuing.
Yeah, they know if this is a bad idea or not, and they've also been through some bad ideas of hardware.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just coming off the Steambox thing.
Right. Steambox, Steam Link, I mean, they ended up basically having to give those away.
Yeah, $1.50 at one point, the last sale, I think.
Yep. And so,
either Gabe's a glutton for punishment, or they think there's still some life left in this one.
Maybe this is like Gabe's last stand or something. Maybe this is him saying, you know what, I'm not going to do this much longer.
If this doesn't work, we'll just make Half-Life 2.
Right.
We'll just make Half-Life Episode 3.
Or his perspective is like, this is my gift or whatever. Like, this is the last thing I want to do before I retire. I mean, he's getting old, and how much longer does he want to do this crap? Like, maybe this is him saying, I want to go in with one last project, and the last project is going to have Half-Life 3 attached to it, and I can ride out like a champ. I mean, he could do that anyway, but it just seems like a really big, dumb move to me.
I don't know about that.
I mean, how expensive it is to create a piece of hardware like that.
Yeah, but you're still in the situation. You're not thinking in terms of entrepreneurial thought. Like whoever gets this right first is going to rule a whole new wing of media, and all these guys.
I'm not convinced of that yet with VR.
Oh, it's coming. Maybe it's 10, 15 years out.
I just think AR it might be the technology that does that.
Not until AR stops being $4,000.
Yeah.
And we already kind of had a little experiment with that with Google Glass, and that thing hit a wall faster than you could say, I don't want to wear a stupid thing on my face. AR, I'll tell you what AR is going to have to be. AR is going to have to either be built into normal glasses or be a contact lens.
Yeah.
And that's a long way out. But this is also a totally different experience. Like like AR and VR, I don't really consider equivalents. I consider them kind of sibling technologies.
They're just
but like
bleeding edge tech.
They're bleeding edge tech that do similar ideas, but like it's just not. You don't get the same thing out of each one. I'm not saying one's better than the other.
I mean, one is all consuming, and the other one intentionally keeps you in the real world.
And I like both of them.
Me too. Yeah.
I like both stuff, but like VR, I think has more cultural cachet, just in the sense that like everybody knows what it is, even if you don't care about it. You still know when someone puts those goggles on in a movie that's what they're doing. I mean, AR, your touchstone for that is basically Minority Report. Which is still cool, but it doesn't quite have. We've been seeing VR stuff in mass entertainment since we were
Star
children.
Trek.
Yeah, it goes way back. I mean, that's the dream, isn't it? The holodeck.
It always has
where you don't have to actually put a thing on.
Anything on. Yeah, it just appears in front of your eyes.
But I can see why someone like Gabe would want to still have his hand in on this thing and still be moving forward to try and evolve it, especially when it's not like Rift has given up. It's not like PlayStation's given up.
Rift has Facebook money.
Yeah, and Gabe has Gabe money, and PlayStation has Sony money. Like this is not a payday developer's gig here. With whatever they were working on that for, if you remember that.
Yeah,
Starbreeze's weird foray
into whatever.
Yeah. What do you think about it being called the Index? Like, I'm trying to figure out what that implies.
I don't know. I'm kind of ambivalent to it.
Like the finger, or like the contents of a book?
I don't know. I honestly have no idea. The logo for it makes even less sense. It's a circle with two half circles. Have you seen it?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, it's a circle, and then the other circle has been cut in half, but they're like two Pac-Man facing the circle. It's very weird. I have no clue what it means. None at all. But we're going to find out soon, because apparently the big announcement is coming on May 31st. And they go up for pre-order on June 1st, right before E3 kicks off. So we shouldn't have to wait much longer. And
we don't know the price yet?
No, they haven't announced that. We do have some recommended specs, and the specs for this are shockingly light. So it will come with Knuckles controllers, which are those crazy ones that I talked about last week. That
track your fingers.
That game Boneyard or whatever uses. I always forget the name of it. Boneworks. So it's coming with Knuckles controllers. Its requirements are a GTX 1070 and 8 gigabytes of RAM, which I was shocked at. And those were recommended. That wasn't the base. That was the recommended specs. A GTX 1070 and only 8 gigs of RAM. So it sounds like Valve has had some kind of a breakthrough in some way. I don't know. That seems very, very light for what's basically the third generation of VR HMDs.
Well, it's going to depend what kind of resolution it's pushing. I mean, look, they could keep the same resolution that the Vive had and just improve the screens.
Right. Yeah.
And that would be a big enough upgrade as it is, because the screen door effect is definitely in play.
It's definitely with PlayStation VR as well.
It's not as bad as PlayStation VR, but like it's still there. And the other thing, of course, is I'm curious about eye tracking.
Yeah.
Eye tracking to me is very important, because one of the most notable things about the Vive is the narrow field of focus, and how because you move your eyes to, if you move your head to look at everything in the Vive, it's fine. But if you use your eyes, if you move your eyes, things over here are not necessarily in focus.
Right. Yeah.
And like that's not how our eyes work. And the problem is you are more likely to move your eyes to look around the more convinced you are of the environment. Because that's how you move around to look around. So like basically as soon as you get, that's the problem I used to have with the Vive that was annoying, was like as soon as I'd get immersed, I'd move my eyeballs instead of my head, and everything would be out of focus in the corner of the screen, and it'd pull me out.
Right.
So as soon as you can figure out a tech that like realizes where you're looking and can refocus things on the screen wherever that happens to be, like that's a key move. I think that's one of the holy grails right now.
Yep.
I don't know. I will be interested to see how that works.
But no price announced, no date for its release. Again, they're going to unveil it the 31st, and then pre-orders open June 1st. But other than that, that's all the info we got.
Yeah. I'm just interested. I'm wondering, like, why am I pre-ordering this? Like, are there any?
Valve.
I mean, at least PlayStation showed me some games coming up.
Maybe on the 31st they show you Half-Life 3.
I could get. I might do it.
I have a feeling that might make you plunk down your credit card.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
It depends on how good it looks.
Good it looks, and the fact that it's still wired is a little disappointing. But.
Well, it's either that or you have an HMD that lasts for like 45 minutes and you got to recharge it.
Yeah.
What's the lesser of those two evils?
I don't know. I mean, you could give me like a little battery pack.
Yeah.
The problem I have is like my PC is not in a place. The irony is in my old apartment I had more room near my PC to do the VR stuff, and I don't really have that in the house. And I'd basically have to get a new little box to do VR and put it out in like the main room. And like move the couch and shit, and it's just like at that point, what am I doing? You know, like you're gonna.
That's when you're letting it take over your life.
Right. But or
gotta draw the line somewhere.
Or you'd have to rearrange the room to play it, and it's just like it's fun the first few times, or like to show people who haven't done it. But how often am I gonna move a couch
and do it by yourself
to play Beat Saber?
Right.
You know, it's like maybe I'll just play Sekiro again.
Yep. So we'll get more information.
Sekiro doesn't require heavy lifting.
It doesn't. Mentally, maybe.
just yelling.
Yeah, that's it. So we'll get more information on that soon. An interesting development, though. I really didn't think that Valve would get into hardware, particularly after what happened with its prior forays into hardware. I'm not complaining that I got like a Steam Link really cheap, but man.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what kind of like makes me wonder more about it. Makes me more curious, just because they must think, even with all the lessons they must have learned with all their hardware problems, they must think there's something here.
They must have a killer app, is my guess. Half-Life 3, baby.
Or Half-Life prequel.
Right, either one.
Half-Life
Anything
something.
new Half-Life
something
is a killer app.
Portal something. Yeah. Like, there's going to be something in there that you're going to need a VR headset to do.
Yep. All right, let's move on to our last topic of today's show. We're going to talk about
Team Fortress 3.
Yeah.
God, can you imagine?
That would be huge, too.
It would be huge, but it would make a lot of people vomit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Our last topic of the day is Mortal Kombat 11. I was in the closed beta. That was going on the past week for people who pre-ordered, but Warner Brothers hooked me up with a code. And it had like 5 fighters. I mostly played as Scorpion because I've been playing with him for years and years. And so I know like how to do his fatalities and most of his base moves. And I didn't have a lot of time to play, so I wanted to make sure I didn't waste my time learning characters while I was playing it. But there's like 5 characters. There's like 1 stage. The modes that were in the closed beta, you could play head-to-head online, or you could play through like the towers. And the tower that they had there were just the fighters that were in the beta, so it was only like a 5-fighter tower that you had to go through. But you could choose multiple difficulty settings to play the tower solo. Where do I start? So the first thing I would say is, and I haven't played a ton of the last couple Mortal Kombats. I would play them for a while and then kind of fall off. I definitely played Injustice more over its last couple entries, but both of them play very similarly at the same time. So it's not like you're a fish out of water if you're playing one and try to play the other. The first thing I would say about it is it feels more like an old Mortal Kombat to me. So the last couple Mortal Kombats I played, and even Injustice to an extent, it was faster. Like there was a run button. There's no run button in this. So when I would play like the last couple games from NetherRealm, it seemed like as soon as the fight started, a dude would just charge at me and then annihilate me before I even had a chance to like learn how to play or whatever. This game is a much more thoughtful. And you can even see with NetherRealm playing it here, it's a lot more about your positioning and your distance. Like you play footsies a lot more in this than you did in prior MK games. It's not just like a rush and just try to overcome your opponent with a barrage or a combo or a juggle or something like that. It's a lot more thoughtful. Some people may call it slow, but I actually prefer the slower pace, the way this game plays.
I was never a big fan of the run button. Mortal Kombat 3 is kind of where the series lost me.
Yep, that's where it went to a more fast, like frantic style of play.
Now, because that was the thing at the time, everything had to have a turbo mode.
Yep. But honestly, after playing this for a couple days, that's what stood out to me the most. The game is a slower pace, more deliberate. It feels like it has more of that call and response aesthetic to it, like the old Mortal Kombats did. It's almost like you take turns, like attacking each other in this. Whereas I felt like the last couple MKs I played, it would just seem like it was just mania, just trying to get that hit in to stop a combo or roll out. Now, I think what most people will assume is the biggest change to this game is the meters. And it is a big change. So in the last game, basically the offensive and the defensive, this game is gross too, by the way. The offensive and the defensive meters kind of were the same. So there's moments in the game where you need to get out of a combo, you need to roll out of a combo, or maybe you want to add a little more oomph to an attack. In the past, you had 1 meter for that. Now that's changed. You have a separate meter for each one of them. So say you want to throw a fireball. Well, if you want, you can add a second fireball to it by using the offensive part of the meter. On defense, if you're caught in a combo or a juggle and you need to get out and you're about to die, you can use the defensive meter to overpower the enemy and get out of things that you normally wouldn't be able to get out of. And it adds a lot of strategy to the game. And again, in combination with the kind of the more technical, distance-based combat, it makes the game feel way more thoughtful than it used to be. And I like both of those changes a lot. The one thing I don't like is a new mechanic called the Fatal Blow. So as you play and you take damage, when your health gets down to 30% left, you get a Fatal Blow. And Fatal Blows are very easy to pull off. You basically just squeeze both triggers. Now when you do that, your character basically slashes. If that slash lands, then the Fatal Blow happens. You can block it just like any other attack though. So it is easy to stop a Fatal Blow if you block exactly right. You can basically cancel it out. And then if you're the person who had the Fatal Blow cancel out, another meter pops up. You don't have to wait the whole distance for it to get another chance at it. But you do have to wait a little bit. Another meter pops up that basically says, okay, now you can try it again once it's done. My problem with the Fatal Blows are they're way too long, and they're the same. So every character basically has 1 Fatal Blow. So what happens is, if you're winning the match and you get your enemy down to 30%, immediately they pull off their Fatal Blow. If you don't block it, you have to sit and watch the cinematic. And they last, I don't know, I don't want to exaggerate, probably 8 to 10 seconds, each Fatal Blow. And each character just has 1, or at least in the beta they only have 1. Maybe in the final game they have more than 1. But after you've fought a couple times, you get so sick of watching those Fatal Blows. The mechanic of it is fine. When you get hit with a Fatal Blow, it'll typically take about 1/3 of your health bar, something like that. So it's not like a finisher that'll just like drain your health bar from down to 0. So if you're winning a match and someone pulls a Fatal Blow on you, you can generally withstand it and still be alive. And chances are what happens is you can see there. So in the top left, Fatal Blow is flashing, R1, R2, or whatever. So, well, actually, it's going to demonstrate exactly what I said. So they do the Fatal Blow on you. That means you're down below 30% now. So if after you survive that Fatal Blow, you can pull off your Fatal Blow right away, immediately. But they last forever. Like Scorpions literally, I think, last like 12 seconds. And it's the same one every single time. And the first couple times you see them, they're great. Because you can see, well, here's one right here. They're amazing. They're gory. They're fantastical. You never could imagine.
That was about 9 seconds.
Was that 9 seconds?
Yeah.
So, but after you see them 3 times, you don't want to see them anymore. There's no way to skip it, because skipping it would be weird. Because how do you bring both players back to the fight then? It's going to be an awkward transition to get people back into the fight.
Well, it sounds pretty much like the X-ray moves, except it's a different... the interesting thing about
the X-ray moves have been turned into something else. It's called the crushing blows.
Was how they've separated out all the... Because they separated everything out from the 1 meter, which I think is a way of... Because look,
it's smart.
It's smart because, well, in the previous ones, the problem was that the most valuable thing you could use meter for was combo breakers.
Yeah.
And so everyone, especially in the tournament,
they would never use them for anything else.
Would never use, because you needed the combo breaker. You could never waste it on an X-ray or anything like that, because, or sometimes even not just a powered up EX move, because you needed to have that combo breaker ready in case you got caught.
Yeah.
So separating them out is a good idea. It's just interesting how many separate things there are now to deal with and keep track of.
It's not that hard to
I would
manage.
guess the Fatal Blow things are not going to be particularly relevant in competition.
Tournament fighting?
Because it seems like they're pretty easy to blow. They're sort of a come-from-behind mechanic for people that sort of mash a little bit
That's
more.
True. Yeah.
But we'll see. I mean, you never know what people are going to... you're talking about how it's slower and more methodical, but I have a feeling when you see it like Evo, it's going to be just be like, oh my god,
it's not the same game I was playing.
But the fact that there's so many kind of cinematic moves where people get their bones broken and stuff does feel like it slows. You're intentionally trying to slow the game rhythm down a little bit.
And I'm okay with the actual rhythm of the fighting slowing down a little bit. It's the Fatal Blows that last 10 seconds that just slows everything down and stops it. And again, it's cool the first few times you see it, but like anything else, you get desensitized to it, and you're just like, I really don't need to see this skull crushed again. Like, I don't need to see the eyeball pop out again. I saw it the first, like, 5 times.
Maybe you should be able to use meter to skip the fatal blows. I don't want to see it. Like, I'm just going to use a quarter of my meter and skip this.
You were talking about the X-ray moves. Now they're called crushing blows in this. And basically, it's the way, at least the way they work, they seem to work for me, is just catching the enemy at the right place at the right time. It didn't seem like there's not like moves that you pull off that are a crushing blow. Like just suddenly, if you just caught your uppercut just right, instead of just doing a normal uppercut, it would zoom in and you would show the uppercut hitting the jaw and sort of the jaw smashing and all that. So that seemed to happen pretty organically. It wasn't something that felt like it was triggered or anything like that. I think it was just kind of a reward for nailing your timing. At least that's the way it seemed to me. I could be wrong on that, but that seemed to be the way that it operated. There's also a bleed mechanic in the game. So after someone does one of the crushing blows on you, you start bleeding. And you will keep bleeding until you land an attack. So after you've taken a crushing blow, you need to get back in the fight like right away, because if you don't, you're going to start bleeding out and you're going to keep losing your health. Again, another system that I think is cool and I like, and I think it makes sense. So I enjoyed my time with Mortal Kombat. I will say this, like playing the single player stuff in the beta was really, really easy. Like I played normal, and I mean I was just walking through the AI. So hopefully, you know, for those of you who don't play online or don't play against others much, and you want to play the single player, and obviously with the campaign like Mortal Kombat has, you are going to want to play it by yourself. The way it is right now, the AI is just a freaking joke. So
I'm sure that will not be the case.
I hope not. I hope that's something that they fix.
There's one thing that defines some of these NetherRealms games is that you hit those AI blockades where it's like
Goro, where it's just impossible. Yeah. Like I remember him in the arcade, man. I can't tell you how much money I wasted trying to beat him in the arcade.
Yeah, Goro never bought those guys. It was Kintaro that was the hardest one for me.
Yeah.
The Centaur in 2. And I'm into like what they're doing with the story here, where they're having the younger and the older versions of the characters meet and
the other thing too about the customization. So the customization is crazy. Like it is mind blowing how much you can tweak your characters. Now they've been very smart about allowing that stuff only in certain modes, because what happens is it actually improves your character. It makes him a better fighter, a stronger fighter. So there are. Like, they've quarantined that off. So if people want to play a mode where, yeah, everybody's got a character that's beefed up by all this gear that they've attached to him, you can do it. If you want to fight tournament style, where the rules are just the rules, you can do that as well.
Well, I think that, I mean, Injustice 2 had that where you could do that, but in, like, certain modes, the bonuses applied, and, like, competitive modes, they were just cosmetic.
They're just cosmetic. Yeah, that's the way it's going to work here as well. And there are like 3 different versions of each character. Like Scorpion, there's 3 of them. There's like the classic guy. There's like the more futuristic looking guy that almost looks like Jason X. And then there's like Ed Boon's take on it or whatever. And I like that. Like, and it changes. Like one of them fights mostly with a chain. One of them fights mostly with a pole. And it does alternate how you play with that character. So even though there's a roster with X number of fighters, actually within that roster, there are legitimately variations to play with each character that fundamentally change how you would play with that character. So whatever the final character count is for this game, and it appears like they're going more for traditional and not adding as many characters this time, but we'll see. Whatever the final character count is for this game, that is not truly the character count for it. There's going to be sort of hidden stuff in there for you guys to check out. But otherwise, I would say I enjoyed my time with it. I got my butt kicked mostly online. I think I won like 1 out of 5 matches or something like that. And a lot of that was the people who were playing. I was level 3 and they were level like 15. Dude, there were some people who played this game, that beta, from the moment it launched, like the whole time. It was insane the fight record some of these people had. Like one guy I fought had won already like 130 times. I was like, holy crap, dude. Like you have not slept since this beta came out. So the matchmaking did not seem great, unless I was the only like level 2 to level 5 character in the whole beta. Every time I fought, it was someone way, way more experienced than I was. So hopefully, again, that's something that gets fixed for the final version, and I'm assuming it will. But otherwise, I had a blast playing it. I still like Mortal Kombat. I still like playing Mortal Kombat. I love the flow and the ebb of the game. It felt really good to pull off one of Sub-Zero's finishers, although the controls have been switched. So his old finisher, where he would turn into the dragon, or no, that's wait, which one?
That was Liu Kang.
That's Liu Kang. Yeah, Sub-Zero's used to be pull down his mask and breathe fire, right?
That was Scorpion.
Scorpion. That's what I'm talking about. Scorpion. Now that same move is not the same fatality. He does like a different thing now. But it was fun. Like, I was trying to do the fatality, and I realized I was too close, and I had to find like that perfect distance away, and it just brought back a lot of memories of back in the arcade days for me. It made me feel like a kid again for a little bit, which doesn't happen very often. So I was pretty impressed with it. I would have liked for there to be a little more content in the beta than there was. But what I played, I enjoyed a ton. So I think it's full steam ahead for Mortal Kombat 11. If you're excited about it and you got your pre-order in, I think you're all good. I think you're gravy. I think you're going to have a good time with it. And if you're on the fence, I think it's something you should definitely look into. I'm guessing there will be an open beta. Is that like this weekend?
Maybe. I mean, it comes out like next week.
Yeah. So maybe there is an open beta this weekend. And I highly, highly recommend everybody check it out, even people who maybe don't like fighting games all that much, because Mortal Kombat is kind of in a class all on its own. But I guess at the same time, people know by now whether they like it or not.
Yeah, I don't think this one's going to change your mind.
No, it's not that different. It's still Mortal Kombat. So if you haven't liked the ebb and flow of it in the past, you're probably not going to like this one either. All right, it's time for our trailer of the week. And it's always tough to choose a trailer of the week when you have a convention, because all the big trailers come from the convention, but then you use those trailers to talk about the games that were in the convention. So it was a bit of a struggle this week, but ultimately I think the biggest trailer that wasn't a part of the rest of the show was Call of Duty Black Ops 4. It has released a brand new Blackout Battle Royale map, but that's not all, Matt. Another one of PAX's predictions, I believe, is absolutely coming true. Blackout is going to be free all of April. So how do you make a mode free for a month and then try to charge people for it? Can you do that?
They're going to try.
I don't know. I think this might end up being permanent. But anyway, they were smart. When they announced the free month, they also announced the second map for Blackout, Alcatraz. Let's roll it.
The sound of the bells when the lullaby gone, and the boys unleash hell when the war's on. Blood thirsty when the boys put their wars on. Tell them let it go a little bit of blows on. Put them on the battlefield where they take, and then go in the
Squad redeploying. Good as new.
Got you.
Circle collapse imminent. You have a nice day.
throw a little bit of dirt on them. Put a little dirt on them.
Sayonara.
I'm the general. I'm being worth something. My soldiers is ready to put a black house on them.
So Matt and I were saying during the trailer, we're like, how do you charge for this now after Apex Legends? You can't.
You're just in also ran territory.
Yeah, I mean, and then Matt was like, well, and I said, well, I don't think they're going to. I think after this April period, I think they're just going to leave it free, because how do you go back and charge people for something after you let them have it free for a month? You can't really. And then Matt said, well, then those people should get crazy cosmetics.
Yeah, the people who actually paid for it.
And I was like, yeah, you should. You should get, like, the best cosmetics in the game. And then Matt made a good point, and he's like, well, if you actually wear those cosmetics, then you look like the sucker who paid for it. Which is a very good point.
That's the thought that counts, right?
Yeah. But once again, Pac on the money. Man, he is on a roll. Like, seriously, like, all his predictions have come true for, like, the last, like, year and a half. And some of the predictions he had been making for, like, 2 years. Like, it just kills me when people get on him. Like, you need to pay more attention. He's doing a hell of a job. W. Matthew, have to ask, what's your guys' take on Jason Schreier's story on BioWare published today? We talked about it already in other topics. Great work, as always. Majora Tom 91. How would you rate the viability on my prediction for the next consoles? Both will have tiered models. In regards to specs and power, both bare minimum systems will be more powerful than Stadia, though not by much. Will cost between $299 and $399. That's where I think we may differ. They also have a Pro X model that could be $499 or above. Could definitely see this happening with Sony, given they're also selling PSVR 2. Well, I mean, we kind of talked about this already.
Yeah, a fair amount.
And maybe you tuned in late.
But I do think it's you're looking at $500 period
Minimum.
You're not looking at a Pro or an X model tiering, but you are looking at disc or no disc drive.
Yeah. And then they replace with a hard drive.
Which I think will be the same price. But I'm guessing you're paying $500 for these things.
I think if you're really going to beat Stadia, if you're going to go over 10 teraflops, I think you're going to have to charge more than $500. The rest of your stuff, I think, makes sense. I just think your pricing is wishful thinking. I just don't think there's any way they're going to get the price down, if it is, in fact, that powerful. Justin Horman, what are your thoughts on the dude getting 20 years for causing a death from a swatting call? Will this be enough of a deterrent, or do you think the people who do this crap don't care about consequences or think they won't get caught? First of all, let's give a high five for the guy getting 20 years.
Yep.
Deserves it. And I hope he serves all 20 years in prison. I hope he doesn't get out early for any reason. Yes, I don't know how this could not be a deterrent.
Well, I mean,
20 years in prison for that skinny little runt.
I mean, the only thing I'll say is I do kind of agree with Justin in the sense that, like, his last part of his question is, like, do you think the people that are doing this are thinking critically well enough to even understand what deterrent would mean in this game? You're probably still going to have people doing it anyway. I mean, nothing's 100% deterrent.
I mean, people
it's a pretty good thing.
People who shoot up schools knowing either they're going to kill themselves or they're going to be in prison for the rest of their lives,
right.
And they still do it. So, sure, there are some people. I think more people who aren't psychotic, who are just maybe a little twisted. Yeah, I think it is a deterrent. If people can still understand what prison is, it is absolutely a deterrent.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fine sentence. Yeah, some people are saying it was too much. I do not agree with that.
How's it too much? He killed someone.
Yeah. Like, don't send SWAT. If you're worried about going to prison for 20 years, don't send SWAT teams to people's houses.
That you don't know.
Yeah.
I mean,
or at all. Like,
right.
Don't just send SWAT teams to people.
I mean, the crazy part is the guy who was killed in this had nothing to do with the SWAT.
Right.
Like, they sent him to an address where somebody else had lived. And the guy walks out, and the cops just shoot him. And I mean, look, the cops are partly guilty for this as well. Like, you don't just walk into someone's house and shoot him when he walks out. Like, but if none of that happens, if this dumbass doesn't SWAT. So I am totally fine with that sentence. And I hope it's a deterrent. I think there are some people out there that are just so crazy and lonely and weird that it won't be. But I think for the vast majority of people, it will be.
Yeah, it's not going to stop everything, but at the very least, it's at least a good sign that, like, you know, the justice system is caught up with this new crime, basically. Because that was part of the problem for a while, was like there was no information about how to deal with this. He's almost like what we're talking about with the YouTube thing. It's like you had to wait for law to catch up to this new way to do horrible things.
Yeah, it sucks, man. Oh, hey, Freeze Frame Rate and Carl Carlston, thank you very much for subscribing via Twitch Prime. Appreciate it. And thanks for waiting until the end so we could thank you as well. Here's one from Freeze Frame Rate. Since you subscribed, I want to answer your question. What were your thoughts on the Gearbox conference? What was worse about it? The head of the company doing magic tricks, or that the reveal trailer for Borderlands 3 had serious technical issues?
Probably the latter.
Yeah. Although the magic tricks were...
I expect Randy to do magic tricks, though.
He just had to impose it on everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody knows he loves to do magic. When people go to his house, he forces them into this theater where he does his little magic show. He had to force this on everybody. He had to. He's like, I do magic, and I'm going to do magic on stage at PAX. I thought it was awkward and weird. I don't know.
Like, it maybe it would be less awkward and weird if people were more familiar with him.
Right,
like,
and knew that that's what he does.
It is what he does.
Yeah.
He's I think the great nephew of one of the great Cardini.
Right,
Which is one of the classic magicians.
Yeah.
Like one of the guys, like the Prestige is referenced. You know,
based on, yeah.
Well, I don't think he had a teleporting Tesla machine, but like, It's that kind of when you think of a magician, like his great uncle. I think it's his great uncle was basically one of those guys.
Yeah.
There's a big display of him in the Magic Castle in Los Angeles. If you ever go, there's a big display of him, and Randy's name is there because he's the one who donated all the stuff. So
right.
Yes, magic is important to him. It's kind of in his blood. It's just sort of something I expect him to do when he gets a chance. I didn't think it was that horrifying. I thought the fact that the frickin' trailer didn't work was way more disturbing because that's the thing you got to sell people.
Yep. Let's see. Oh, Vincent has a note. It says on the Borderlands stuff, the remasters launch tomorrow, and the Borderlands 3 date just leaked as September 13th.
Wow, that's faster than I thought.
That is faster, yeah. So there you go. I also want to clear something up. On last week's episode, I gave you guys bad information, and I want to clarify that. If we make a mistake, we want to clear it up. In the Division 2, you can matchmake with other people for specific missions. So you have to walk up to that very specific point that has like the screen where like the mission kicks off, and if you stand there, then you have an option to matchmake with people just for that mission. I played the game for 40 hours, never saw it, never realized it. Somebody pointed it out, and I just wanted to say that I was wrong and I had that information incorrect so that I update you guys on that. My apologies on that. I just never saw it and never found it. Maybe take one or two more. People keep asking about the BioWare article.
I mean, that is
some
the
people
big
must have
thing
come
that-
in late.
The big news of the day is this Schreier's article and the fact that GameStop lost $680 million this year.
It's not going to be around for long.
If you need some cheap Funko Pops, give it a few months.
Okay, here's the last one from Super Cordon Bleu. One great aspect of the Switch is that while underpowered, it's close enough in specs it can get good ports from PS4 and Xbox games. I think he means PS3 and Xbox 360 games.
Maybe. I mean, people do seem to think that the ports from the existing systems are viable, but you don't see that much.
I mean, they're viable. Are they good?
Not enough to warrant buying it on Switch to me.
Some even day one. With the PS5, Xbox 2 set to be very powerful, how powerful does the Switch Pro have to be that the trend of receiving good third-party ports will continue? I completely disagree with that. Like every Switch third-party port is like a watered-down version of the game everywhere else. Like,
yeah, I would never choose the Switch port over.
I feel like Switch fans are like, it's playable, so it's good. Like, no, that's not good.
I mean, what was it? Dead Cells can't even hit 60 at this point. It's
Like,
the only platform that can't do 60.
the
Dark
indie stuff,
Souls
I don't even
Remastered
care.
can't do 60.
Indie
Like,
stuff, I don't even care. But it's like, Doom. Doom is all about 60 frames per second. That's what that game was to me. Mm-hmm. Playing it in 28 or whatever it was running on Switch, no, that's not a good port. That is absolutely sacrificing the vision of the artist that the artist originally intended. You're playing the backwoods $2 Chuck version of the game. Mm-hmm. And that's been the case with every third-party game. Look at NBA 2K, runs like crap. FIFA looks like crap, runs like crap. I mean, we can go on and on. There are no good third-party ports on Switch. Can you think of any that aren't an indie game that can run on anything?
Not really. I mean, I don't play a lot of them because I don't care.
Because you know they're crap.
Right. Well, because the answer here is like
and
the Switch
for your
Pro.
Question,
the Switch Pro has to be way more powerful than it's going to be.
Yeah,
I can tell you that right off the bat. And I don't care because I don't buy the Switch. I don't buy Nintendo consoles for third-party ports. I buy them for Nintendo's first-party output,
stuff.
and that's good enough.
Yep.
Like, I mean, if someone's really obsessed with having a gimped version of some multi-platform game to play on the go, that's fine. I mean, Doom is more than adequate to play on a train, I guess. But like, I just prefer, if I have the platform or the whatever I have to play it on a better form, I'm gonna play it on that.
Yep.
The same way where I don't play the Switch Portable because I don't want to play it on its tinier screen. I would rather play it, on the big screen with surround sound. Like it's, I don't know what else to say. I have everything that could be multi-platform on the Switch. I have a superior version on another platform.
Yep, me too.
There's just no need for it.
Joaquin Dragoon, thank you for the bits, brother. Appreciate it. And that's it. We got to go. I think we may have beat last week's episode this week. So there you go. That's GameFace episode 162. Coming down the pike this week, there'll be a new Ask Shane. I'll be asking for new questions for Ask Shane this week as well. I just got the stickers, and I forgot to bring them. So one of the new tiers on our Patreon is a sticker tier. And if you pledge at that tier, you get stickers. We have 3 different models. I'll bring them on the show next week to show you. Some of you guys will be getting messages from me on Patreon for your shipping address so that I can send those out probably before you ever see them. But they came out really well. I'm pretty excited for those, and I'll show them to you as soon as I can. But other than that, everybody have a great week. We're on Tuesdays now. Hopefully we can stay here for a bit.
Probably.
I do want to apologize for the show jumping around, but it is completely out of my control, people. It just is. I think that's the #1 complaint we get about GameFace or Sifted in general, is that you guys can't count on when the shows are going live. I totally understand that, but please understand that there's nothing I can do. It is out of my control. Sam has a life, Matt has a life, and we got to work around it. So I'm doing the best I can. Take it easy on me. Hopefully we can stay at Tuesdays here. I'm not promising anything, but hopefully we can stay at Tuesdays here for the foreseeable future. Just cut me some slack, please. I'd appreciate it. So thanks for everybody who was on the stream. You guys were great as always. Asked great questions at the end. Thanks for anyone who contributed via Twitch Prime. Again, YouTube folks, please help us out with Twitch Prime. It can make a huge difference for us. So everyone have a great night and have a great week. GameFace is up and out.